Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. What is up, DB?
How we doing?
Oh, we're doing all right.
Yeah.
We're doing okay. You know, it's a Friday. We're out here.
Not quite Little Orphan Annie.
What do you mean?
No sun yet.
Oh, no, the sun has not come up this morning.
But it will.
One of these moments, one of these days.
It absolutely will.
You know, at some point, I enjoy it when we get to the point of the year where the sun's up when we start the show.
Sun is out.
I like that.
Freezing cold.
I like it.
Good morning again.
I like it when we both don't beat the sun to work.
I won't get too much into that because that is, of course, Drizzy, the guy you affectionately call Drake.
Oh, I don't affectionately call him anything.
Don't be a hater.
Out of the two of us here, I think we know.
Well, I don't. Let's not make it seem like I'm rolling with skirt and pom poms.
Big Drake guy.
I don't. I don't.
This is what I heard.
I don't have a strong disdain either way.
Is that you're a big Drake guy? That's all I know. Micah was like, "No, we're not doing that." That's totally on me.
I got to pick him up early today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably literally 10:15.
What's he doing?
Waiting on me. And we got to be up at the high school.
And that's totally on me.
Got to have a off season meeting of the mind. So it'll be cool.
Yeah.
District wrestling going on. I'm pretty excited about that. You're like, are you joking?
No, I'm sure you are excited.
I'm pretty excited about district wrestling.
I know you're super into wrestling.
Excited.
It's a big win. We'll talk to Mike Sautter at 9. Watched very intently. Couple interesting things. Our own Austin Jacobson was at Westview and Millard North last night. So I talked to 3 coaches, and they can remain anonymous. I shall let them remain anonymous. The consensus is, I think.
Yeah.
And is 3 enough?
3 what?
Of a sample size, 3 opinions.
Oh,
let me just say the consensus amongst the 3.
Probably depends on
coaches.
what it is, but yeah.
Is Millard North has the best roster.
Okay.
Westview was playing the best.
Okay.
Because, Millard North has basically come from the rear.
Yeah, they started the season pretty rough.
Yeah, and dropped, and 9. What's wrong with Millard North? And 7, and what's wrong with Millard North? And then 4.
Just climb.
Here comes
climb their way back up.
So I'm waiting for my buddy to message me back about the conversations we had about 5 weeks ago, where he felt like I was being a Westview apologist. Because now they have won head-to-head. But I stand by what I said. Westview had the better wins and was the better team at the time.
Yeah, they'd been playing better.
No, I'd love to have seen that environment real time, but unfortunately, I was watching a lot of basketball.
Yeah, I had a little Nebraska basketball going on.
That was great. Love the early tip. Love the 5:30 women's tip. Feel really good about that.
Yeah.
And
big win?
Yeah.
Big win.
Huge win. They needed it. It was gutsy.
Both in margin and in magnitude.
Yeah. It was
took care of business.
Gutsy win. And we were all hoping, as we, cleaned up the kitchen for a double dip.
Going for that Maryland sweep.
Was not to be had.
No.
Not to be had.
It felt like, I think I told you this during the game. It felt like Maryland did a really good job of keeping Nebraska just far enough away.
So I had one of my guys to hit me with, he was surprised Nebraska stayed in it that long. Did you get that feel during the game?
No, not really.
So I will say this, because I'm kind of vibing. I never felt like Nebraska could get a stop.
Yes. Like, I didn't think Nebraska could get over the hump.
So I'm like, so if that's because, when he said that.
Maybe that's what he meant.
I'm like, yeah, I thought, I didn't know if Nebraska was ever going to get a stop.
I was pretty confident that they weren't going to get all the way back.
Even 73-71?
Yeah, just the way that Maryland was playing and being able to get what they needed when they needed it.
Just the getting to the 10. I thought when Rice got the over-the-shoulder finish, broke neck speed when Nebraska didn't get
Probably
back.
Didn't even see the rim.
I'm like, yeah, Might not be their night.
That's probably not going to be it.
But I was when it was 11 or 14, and they battled back. I was like, are they going to do this again? Because it's almost exactly what happened in Maryland.
Yeah.
At Maryland.
Yeah. I just felt like they didn't have you mentioned the stops. It felt like Maryland was
too many layups
going to be able to get a bucket whenever they needed it. And Nebraska isn't good enough offensively to win a game like that.
Well, although I do think it was their defense that failed.
It was. But, I mean, if you're going to get into a shootout like that, like Nebraska, that's not a game Nebraska wants to play.
I don't think low 80s should have been a shootout. You mean kind of the back and forth?
Yeah, just it felt, I don't know, pace-wise, it didn't feel like a game Nebraska wanted to play.
So if Maryland wasn't getting to the 10.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had the
what they end up shooting 60% for the game?
Yeah.
I mean, it was that pretty deep. And obviously a lot of that is layups, right? And you're making
everybody was talking about Reese. I'm like, that's the wrong R word. You need to be talking about Rice.
Yes. Yeah.
Because my man was Minute Maid.
Just ready to go?
Seriously.
A little microwave?
Oh.
A little Vinnie Johnson?
Oh. Fearless too. The answers.
Yeah.
And maybe Gillespie just saves it for us.
Maybe.
He's pretty clutch.
He can get kind of whatever he wants when he needs it.
Crafty, isn't he?
Yeah.
He'll shoot that thing too.
Yeah, he's a guy that I don't know that Nebraska has an answer for guys like Gillespie.
Well, it depends on who he's partnered with.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the backcourt, I mean, Hoiberg's a really good defender. I think Bryce is a good defender. It's how those guys play together. If Nebraska's going to still dig in the post all the time.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be a no middle and you can play 3 guards, it's going to be tough on Nebraska.
Yeah.
It just is. So, I mean, because the ball, it's going to move.
Well, especially if you're good at attacking closeouts.
Well, I just don't like. So this is way too. That's not. I don't know. I don't like how if you're going to show and chase on a ball screen, you have to stop the dribbler from turning the corner.
Yeah.
The hedge has to be better.
Yeah. People,
you can't just show and be chasing.
No.
Because
you're
not
going
to
to show, you got to go under.
You got to show. You have to slow him down.
If you're just going to show, you have to go under so that you cut him off.
And I'm like,
but it felt like they were just caught in no man's land on ball screen coverage. Like you can't. They were so committed that they couldn't get back, but they weren't committed enough to keep them from turning the corner. Like that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster. You're going to get killed that way.
And the fine line was for me, because you got to the foul line, the shots were just too easy for Maryland, so you allowed them to just stay confident.
Yeah.
But what I think everybody found out, and people will be however they feel about Nebraska, they said this: Maryland's a good basketball team.
They are.
They got a lot of pieces. They shoot it well enough from distance. Queen and Reese, those guys, and it's like it's probably the main thing I was afraid of yesterday morning. How do they play?
Yeah,
they play ridiculously hard.
Yeah,
I mean, if there was ever a ball that was being batted around in the air, did you ever think Nebraska was getting it?
No.
Nope.
And that kind of is a Kevin Willard staple. As much as I don't like him, I don't know that he does. He's done better with Maryland, I think, at least this version of them. I don't know that he does a great job of maximizing his teams. He had some really talented teams at Seton Hall that never felt like they were as good as they should have been. But they always played hard, and it was going to be a miserable experience playing them.
I got a couple of my Carolina guys that are like, hire him tomorrow. And I was like, I don't know.
Nah, no.
I don't know.
North Carolina can do better than Kevin Willard.
You'd think.
I mean, they should be able to. If they are the top 4 job we talk about them being, then they need to be able to do better than Kevin Willard.
How about quietly no answer for Sultan?
Yeah.
Miguel.
Yeah.
Is he he's going to shoot 60% from 3, huh? Okay.
I mean,
he's just gonna pull up.
Yeah. Just do whatever he wants.
Yeah, that was tough. Tough. The crowd tried to keep them in it.
They tried to will it.
73-71, and they stood to their feet. I'm like, oh, we may have something here.
Yeah, I just for whatever reason,
and you get a layup.
for whatever reason, I just never thought they were going to get over the hump. That's just the way the game was playing out to me. I will say, I don't really know what to do with the fact that, like, Andrew Morgan obviously was in foul trouble for most of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up with probably more Berghese minutes or Braxton Mia minutes than you wanted. And so that, I think, kind of amplified the absence of Berghese.
Although I do think, got to give Mia some credit here. I felt like
he wasn't terrible,
especially for the workload.
Yeah, he wasn't terrible.
You got to play a guy 18 minutes. I thought 12 would be the max.
That's probably the max you want to, like,
and
8 to 12.
He hung in there. I was surprised at Euless' impact.
Yeah. I was surprised he played that much.
So one thing I do like, I think,
mm-hmm.
and some people are like, oh, he may not just be able to make up his mind. I do like that Coach Hoiberg is willing to try different things.
Sure.
He gives you the appearance that he's constantly in the moment. You know how some guys do the same thing. They sub at the same minute mark. They have the same kind of substitution pattern. They fall into – it's one of the things I think that used to bug you about Coach Mack, right?
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
So I like the fact that Coach Hoiberg, he'll press just about any button he can if it's working, and he's not –
and if it's not working, he's trying to find an answer.
He'll try something different.
He's trying to find an answer.
So I do like that. Because you had to dust Euless off. He had like a 1.5 game stretch. It was too much exposure. Mm-hmm. So they got away from him the last couple of weeks.
But he goes 14 minutes last night.
Then he goes 14 minutes last night, and it seemed to kind of fit.
4 assists, no turnovers. Like, he had a pretty solid night.
So I'm like, yeah, I do that. Like, that gives – I'm encouraged about the feel for the game.
He had the best plus-minus on the team.
Which was still low. What, 2?
It was -1.
1?
Nobody was positive last night.
Oh, couldn't have been.
For Nebraska. Not a soul.
And Mia was next, right?
So Worcester was also -1, and then Mia was -2.
Let me ask you about exposure in minutes. And I got to go to my guy that I've always liked.
Sure.
It clearly was hurting them defensively. How much do you think what we saw last night from Morgan was being capable versus playing in foul trouble?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because
I think he's more capable than he showed last night.
But can he be that capable and not get in foul trouble? That's what I don't know. Like, can he play his capable role in those extended minutes and not be in foul trouble, right? Like, that's a tricky thing. That's Ryan Cockburner's superpower, right? Is he doesn't foul. He just defends without fouling. It's really hard, especially as a big, because you're constantly put in, like, meet me at the rim situations or cutting a guy off situations, or you're trying to hard hedge on a ball screen.
You're playing 4 guys 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they would have liked to have played Andrew Morgan 30 minutes as opposed to playing Mia 18. Right? What are the other options?
Oh, it may be getting in the weeds here, but some guys, it's interesting. There's a couple players in particular. I would always talk to Alvin about this. This was watching guys grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be talking about a few players in particular, and it's like, man, if you just knew when that threshold was going to hit,
their like minutes exposure threshold,
we'd get them out of the game.
Yeah.
But for a while, it looks really, really good. Mm-hmm. And
it's hard to pull them.
And every coach has those guys.
Yeah, it's hard to pull them when it still looks good, right? But you have to know.
But you know it's coming.
You have to know.
You know.
And you got to get it too early as opposed to too late.
So it's like, in hoops, it seems to be a thing.
Oh, for sure. It's a thing. It's a thing in other sports too. No, like, you've seen those relievers, right? Where it goes, hey, I'm good for 3 outs. If you ask for 4, it's going to be a disaster, right? Or like late stage Pedro, if he was great 1 through 99 pitches, you get him to 101, it's over.
It is off the cliff.
It is done, right?
Yeah.
Starting about 03, if you got him past 100 pitches, you were in deep water. Like, it happens in other sports too.
So I don't know if Morgan's a 30-minute guy.
I don't know, but I think they would like to find out.
I do like him, right? Because what he gives to you offensively. I have to watch a little bit.
He was 5 for 6, 15 points in 21 minutes.
I know, but it's the defensive side
right.
that was that was really, really tough because he couldn't really move. I just don't know how much of it is he really didn't want to once he got into foul trouble.
And how much of that's matchups.
So what I was going to say is I have to watch a little more, but I'm not going to get that comp again.
That's what I mean.
With the way that Maryland plays.
Like
now, maybe Indiana, but they're so bad defensively with their bigs on the floor.
Yeah.
It may not be a thing.
Also, Indiana's sort of a crapshoot, just their situation in the season. Like Derek Queen.
I'm just trying to figure out who
Oh, you're not going to see Queen again, right? Like you're not going to get a like for like comp.
The turnaround that he hit on the right side of the floor.
How about in the middle of the floor? He gets the rebound. He's going to half court, goes around the back.
Yeah.
As he's leading the fast break.
That's kind of what makes him different.
Yeah, that's
at least not different. Like we've seen some good ball handling bigs. That's what makes him good.
Yes, yeah, different than most college bigs.
Because for a guy that's that skilled and can handle the peel, he will still get messy in the paint.
Yep, which you don't get a lot. You don't usually get the super skilled big guys.
You kind of get one or the other.
Yeah, you usually get you got your Anderson Vrzal over here, who's going to do your grimy stuff, and then you've got your Kristaps Porzingis, who's not quite as willing to get his nose in there.
Queen is messy,
and so he goes for 24 and 11,
and he was key.
9 of 11 from the field, and it was key moments. So I don't know, I don't know if Andrew Morgan looked that exposed because it was Queen, or because he got to a minute.
Reese is tough on him too.
Yes. Well,
the dude's active.
You know what I mean? It's really hard to tell for this particular matchup.
Yeah, he's talking about inability to get stops too.
If Morgan's like, hey, can probably only play you 22 minutes, or hey, anybody we played against Queen was going to get cooked.
7 of 15 from behind the arc, and you were 31 of 53 from the floor.
So you know what I like about the second half stats for Maryland? You know how many shots
they didn't shoot? Well, 53 is not a big number anyway for field goal attempts.
No, it's not. But you know how many 3-pointers they shot in the second half? Just attempts.
6.
4.
And they made 3, right?
No, they only made 1 in the second half.
Okay.
They went 1 for 4 in the second half after going 6 for 11 in the first half.
Oh, that's right. They cooked. They
cooked early.
Yeah.
But you know why I like that?
You know, I was kind of getting confused.
What's that?
With Maryland women.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I was like, are they ever going to miss in the first set? Dude, they had a 30-point quarter.
Yeah. That's hard to do.
Unbelievable.
For as few points as they scored.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you're on pace for $120.
Right? And they only ended up with 41 points the other 3 quarters, right? So, but no, the reason I like that is the thing we talked about earlier. They were getting to the rack.
Yeah, it was demoralizing.
Pretty much at will. So if you're this is the thing, this was one of my complaints about Creighton the other day. It seemed like they got to the rack at will early, and then they're like, no, we're going to shoot a bunch of threes. Or, no, we're going to stop getting the ball to Kalkbrenner.
Yeah.
And
I was giving you pushback on that because I was like, shoot, well, what you got to worry about is it's happening to them the other way. Guys are getting into the paint for UConn, and that's not what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't even have to worry about Diarra.
No, but here's the thing.
And you're letting Neely get his feet in the paint? I'm like, you can't do that.
First of all, you're correct. They also, early, it felt like Jason Green was doing a really good job defensively. I don't know if it was, talk about a minutes exposure. He might be a guy you look at for that. He played a lot more minutes in that game than he typically does, even though he starts. He's a lot of the times in the teens.
Yeah, he touched 30, right?
Yeah, he was above 30. And a lot of times, despite being a starter, he's still in the teens. And so you wonder, okay, is that a matchup, or was McNeely just on one, or is that a thing where you go, hey, maybe Jason Green's not ready for 30 minutes a game yet? But my point was, with Creighton against UConn, they didn't have a choice to go back to big for UConn. So if you're in that situation, hey, this is going to be a better offensive lineup for them. We have to make them pay for it. What's the best way we can make them pay for it? Well, they don't have anybody that can guard our best player. That's a pretty good matchup. That's a pretty good way to make them pay. With Maryland, I thought they did a really good job of being like, hey, no one on Nebraska can stay in front of us tonight.
So you guys were lamenting, and I like watching games with hoops heads, but you guys were kind of lamenting. You went through this stretch where there's this conversation between wanting Bryce to have a little more Gary in him.
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's too much, especially during the course of the game. One thing I think we got to be careful of with that, because I hear that a lot, is at what cost? Because if you get Bryce with that kind of mindset, and I'm with you about being in attack mode and kind of getting in some more shots, but what he has to do within the flow of that offense, are you sure?
I think so.
It sounds good.
I think so.
Right? It's like,
because
I want my best offensive player taking
the most shots.
The most shots.
Right, yeah.
That's kind of the linear.
So what do I lose? Let's say I get what I want. What do I lose?
I think you lose the ability to soften the middle. I think you lose body blows.
You don't think that?
I think you get real mid-rangey and perimetery in a hurry. Because he's not an elite level enough ball handler
to get to the rack all the time.
But he could. Now, believe me, if Gary could, Gary can.
Bryce can.
Bryce can. Gary's more willing to make it look however I need to get where I'm going.
He's more willing for it to be ugly.
Some players just aren't like that.
But what if
that's a real thing?
No, it is.
That's a real thing. Sometimes,
but what if
coaches know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's if it doesn't come aesthetically pleasing enough, they won't do it.
You want to know the best example of this ever? Wilt Chamberlain spent one season shooting underhand free throws. It was his best free throw shooting season ever. He didn't like how it looked, so we went back to shooting 48% for his career. That's it. Like, he shot 70% shooting underhand.
You know what I'm talking about?
He didn't like how it
ball
looked.
handlers?
100%. If it doesn't look right, they won't do it. But part of the mindset thing I want from Gary to be in Bryce is to care less about the aesthetics.
Because
if I get that,
that's not as easy as you say.
No, but I'm talking about a person.
It's across all. That right there, is not that easy.
No, I understand that, but I'm also talking about
if you could get a coach to have a player say, "Hey, I don't care what it looks like."
Yeah,
and
most players care what it looks like.
I'm telling you, it's something.
But I'm also talking about a personality transplant, which is not a real thing. So I'm willing to acknowledge it might be
lobotomy in tights.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, brought to you by our friends at the NDOT. Make sure you got those eyes focused and straight ahead. You've got one job as a driver, that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB.
I kind of like what TG said.
What TG said?
Good analogy. It's a really good analogy. TG says, my man Tony, he said Morgan played last night like he had been coached the last few days that he can't get in foul trouble.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I kind of like that little summation.
There's also
because he's getting he was getting crushed last night.
Yeah, on social.
Yeah, and you guys got to kind of get. I mean, this isn't DB here to defend the players, but
maybe a little bit.
I just think you have to think about things other than what you're actually looking at.
Here's the other problem, right?
Like you just can't you just can't say, hey, that guy just is incapable of defending. Number one, it was a brutal matchup for that front court.
For anybody.
Number
any
two,
front
yeah, they've done it all year. Number two,
Queen's one of the best bigs in the country. Like,
number two, it's
different knowing you have to play
log some minutes.
Yeah, it's different knowing you have to play 30 minutes. Especially
so you know what we did?
What's that?
At least I did. I'm not going to drag you into the depths of being wrong with me. Because I was not really vibing with I said this off or on. I wasn't panicking over the Burke deal.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I think they can manage.
Sure.
But the one thing you miss, without even getting into production or offense versus defense, because you never know. I mean, sometimes Burke looks really capable, and sometimes
not as much.
He may hit Devontae Smith on a skinny post in the stands, right? Like, so not get so much that is just not extending guys.
Sure. Yeah.
Just simply not extending
keeping guys in their wheelhouse.
Because what fans do? Fans will say, oh my, we did this with the running backs. Such and such has a good stint.
So like, oh, gotta get him more.
Needs to play more.
Yeah. And sometimes it is true.
I'll give you that.
Sometimes it is true.
I'll give you that.
Like EJ needed to play more.
I'll give you that.
Right? EJ needed to play more.
But coaches know.
Like, hey, this guy's good for X amount of yards.
I know I'm operating within this.
Or this guy only knows.
Everybody has the fire guy. You've heard my analogy 100 times, right? Fire is fantastic at the house and the fireplace. It's even okay in small doses at like a campsite.
Sure.
You get that thing out in the open, exposed.
Actual disaster.
It's a disaster.
Like literal disaster.
There are just some players
that are like that.
Yeah. They just are.
You want to hear it?
Oh man, you got to turn him loose.
So
I hear this a lot about Jackson.
But some guys
I hear this a lot about Jackson at Carolina. Now,
okay.
I do think his minutes are mismanaged.
Sure.
But I do think you have to be careful about turning that guy loose.
Yeah. Well, but we also see Jace Richardson up at Michigan State, where you turn that guy loose and you're like, oh, he's better. He's better than the other guy.
Yeah.
I like him better. Let's do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, those guys exist too.
I was never in on.
You said this every time we brought up Michigan State. You're like, I don't know about Fierce.
I'm not a Fierce guy. And everybody like Fierce.
You're like, I don't know about Fierce. Every time. You and Jacob were, I don't know about Fierce. I mean,
right?
I still think they're the best team in the conference, but I agree. But then you see Jace Richardson after Fierce gets hurt because Izzo's hand was forced, and you go, oh, he's better.
Yeah.
You know, I feel that way about Fedor. I feel like Fedor can play bigger minutes than he's playing.
Okay. I'm not going to kill you over that. You don't know how bad I'm cheering for you to have your moment. I wanted him to make that.
So that corner three, I thought I got it.
So that's not it.
Oh,
no,
okay.
That's not it.
I thought I had it.
I'm a baby steps guy,
okay.
right? I'm a crawl before you can walk. Just make 2 free throws in a row.
Sure.
Start feeling good. You missed the free throw, and the crowd was kind of buzzing. You're like, oh. And you come down, and you put yourself in a position to have to make the big 3. It's like, I think start with just making the back-to-back free throws.
Fair.
And I felt like, okay. Then the 3 will probably feel a little better.
Sure.
I'm speculating a little. But just take the baby step first.
Yeah.
Just make the 2 free throws in a row. I do want you to have your moment.
But to be fair, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
We're still in we're extrapolating mode.
Yeah, we don't know on Fedor yet because we haven't really seen the extended.
But
minutes.
I did. I was like, come on.
But you want to know something funny?
Like math, Shane, you Richards.
Come on, math.
Come on, Fedor.
You know the funny thing about
come on, math, you dick.
But you know the funny thing about talking about Mia and Morgan and Berke and extended minutes? Do you know off the top of your head the most minutes per game Morgan has averaged in a season for his career? 3 years at North Dakota State, now 1 year at Nebraska.
Oh, boy.
He was a starter at North Dakota State for 2 full years. What was his max minutes?
How would I? Okay, so we're just guessing.
Okay.
Yeah. I like these.
I mean, also, I never know like what random stuff you got rolling around in there. So, like, because
this guy could know anything.
Because half the time I ask you a ridiculous question like that, and you're like, "It is this number." I'm like, "Get out of here! Just leave."
It's 24 minutes.
23-2.
Let's go.
So my point is, this is not
overexposure.
This is not just a Nebraska
good
issue.
Pull. Thank you for doing that, because I kind of thought that while everybody's burying him, I'm like, you guys, like let's pull back for a second.
He started 59 out of 64 games his last 2 years at North Dakota State. He averaged 21.7 and 23.2 minutes per game.
Some guys can just get exposed.
That is a limited run guy,
yeah.
Right? If you're not playing major minutes at North Dakota State and then you go to the Big Ten, it's not reasonable to expect you to then play more minutes than you ever played at North Dakota State.
Not to go all Tom Brady, because this isn't like super positive. I'm just being honest.
Okay.
So
Sorry about that.
This is a true story.
Yeah.
So back at the bowl game, against Virginia Tech.
Okay.
I carried the ball like 4 or 5 times in a row, which isn't a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was competing for the job, and we were all 3 coming off injury. So he said, hey, the guy that practices the best is going to be the guy that starts.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay. And the play that everybody runs, the play that everybody talks about is 48 counter trap, right? Oh, he shot out of a cannon. God is my witness. He knows. I was I was physically not feeling very good.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little tired. It was like, They call timeout, come back. We get ready to run the play. I prayed. I'm like, Lord, I feel like poop. I'm not. This is not revisionist
No,
history.
I believe you. I
feel like poop. Like I just don't have it. Like, I just give this thing to you, man. We'll be done. And then you saw the run.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about that is, I was on the verge of being overexposed.
Sure. You were like right on that.
I was on the cusp of being overexposed.
So let me ask you this.
It's not like I feel good saying that.
No,
I'm just keeping it 100,
So-
right? Like I was on the cusp of being overexposed.
So let me ask you this, right? Because it's a razor's edge, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that hadn't gone for the tutty,
Yeah.
and you got stopped, let's say, how long was the run?
I can't remember. I don't know.
I had like 48 in my head for some reason, but it's probably
That's just 'cause I said
48
the
counter.
number, yeah.
Well, okay, so let's say it's a 50-yard run. I don't know off the top of my head,
Wasn't that long.
but let's say you go for 30 on the first one. Might have been in a little trouble if they ask you to run again, right?
Oh yeah, probably.
Like 6 in a row is one thing, 7 in a row might be over the edge,
Yeah,
right? Like it's a razor's edge. there.
I had to. I don't know. I had to get that because that's always what I think of.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I had this great talk with Demario Williams once,
Mhm.
and he had just got moved to end, and some of his a few older peers were not enamored that he was kind of one dimensional.
Sure.
Oh, he just gets to rush the passer.
Yeah.
But it's what some other guys used to say about Trev.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially back then. Like it wasn't as much of a thing.
Demo, he just kept it 100. He's like, listen, man, I got to get in where you fit, and that's about all I can do right now.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like, so some guys, that's guys that come off the bench, or who's the guy that I love? Clippers, super handles. Said he would just go and work on moves at the gym, and then just try them in games, and he had confidence to do so. I said everybody sleeps on him. He's been like 6 man a year, like 26 times.
Lou Williams?
No, good pull.
Jordan Crawford?
Yes, Jamal Crawford.
Jamal Crawford. Jordan Crawford's the bad one. Jamal Crawford.
He tells stories about being overexposed, how his role and how they used was perfect for him.
Yeah.
Some guys are just like that.
Here's my question. In the moment, even though you knew you were tired, did you think you were overexposed, or did you just think you were tired?
I just didn't feel like this is critical. I don't know what it was, 34. I'm like, this is critical. I need some help.
Yeah.
But then when they call, it's my favorite play. 42-48 counter trap is my absolute favorite.
But like
play.
in the moment, you didn't realize you might be overexposed.
No.
That's the hard part for players.
Oh, I know.
Is they don't know. Real time, they don't know.
Like Jelly Roll, man. Save me from myself.
Jesse, hold on. We'll get to you when we come back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We're live at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Don't forget to get to supernovas.com to get your tickets for Sunday's match. They are back in town at the CHI Health Center. Make sure you get, maybe it's a little late Valentine's Day present. Make sure you get out there, get those tickets to your Omaha Supernovas with their 3 PVF All-Stars. Get to supernovas.com today. Before we get into anything else, I want to make sure we get to Jesse here.
Jesse?
He's been waiting patiently, so we appreciate. I assume it's a he. Could be a her. I don't know. Jesse, what do you got for us today?
Ravi, I'm not a her.
Well, Jesse's could go either way for names. I didn't want to assume.
Damon.
I know. I know, Jesse.
What's up, Jesse?
Not much. Hey, so I know you guys got to get into some other stuff, but I might take it off the rails here for a minute.
Let's do it.
No, let's do our thing.
I'm still upset about last night. First of all, I was going to ask a question, but before I do, I'm just going to make a statement. There shouldn't be a universe that exists where myself, a 5'9", 230-pound, 46-year-old man, feels like they've got a shot at a rebound coming off the rim against Ryan Coxler. But that universe exists because I feel like I've got a shot just watching him play, and I don't understand why that universe exists, but it does, and it frustrates the hell out of me. So, having said that, what is it, Ravi as a Creighton fan, follows this team, what is it about this team that prevents them from, once they have their foot on the throat of a decent team, I'm not talking about a mid-major or anything like that, you've got your throat on the foot of a good team. Historically, No, I'm not taking anything away from Mac.
I know the answer to this question.
Under Mac, what is it in this team's DNA that prevents them from pushing the foot all the way down? Because over and over and over again, we're up by 14. 14's not a lot in football. 14's a lot in basketball. You're up by 14 in front of your home crowd who's juiced up, and you lose. And I don't care how sick everybody is. I'm just putting that out there now. I don't care. You're up 14 at home. Why can't they finish good teams?
Do you know what I think it is? And this, I'm not Ravi, but
No, go ahead.
sometimes I pretend to know about sports. And this is specific to Creighton. Jesse, I don't think, even when they're rolling, they don't get enough easy shots. Their momentum typically as a program.
For this particular team or as a program
as
in
a
general?
program in general, has come from dialing from distance. So to stay on the gas when that's how you play, they need to get a few more easy shots. Like if you watch these teams that like Avalanche folks, it's all of a sudden they just get such easy points in the paint, or they can get downhill, or they
easy
get
different than open.
Yeah, easy's different than open.
Okay.
I just think it's hard to make, for as well as Creighton could shoot it sometimes for 15 years, they're still threes, right? I just think the offense doesn't get enough momentum, easy baskets. The closest I think they could come was when, who's a super when Mo Watson could just break you down, and they could go on these crazy runs because you were so compromised. Because he could get in the paint anytime he wanted to. Somebody would get easy shots, or he could get downhill. It was crazy how good that team could play offensively sometimes because people couldn't stay in front of it. But it wasn't because they could make jump shots. It's because he'd get to where he wanted to on the floor. I think there's something to that.
Okay.
I mean, just right? Does that make sense?
I get you.
How long can you make that many threes?
And that's I agree in the sense that, and it's been a couple of years, honestly. Well, I mean, I guess you had Shireman and Trey. But you can tell going into a season when you've got a roster of guys, and I'm looking up and down the roster, and I'm going, I don't know how many of these guys can get to the basket by themselves. And so I saw that going into this year with that team. So that totally makes sense, except for you do have a 7'1" guy.
So that's the thing is that's the counter for the easy baskets.
No, but I got one.
What's that?
This is not a team that's built on post entries. It's a team that getting his touches is built on lobs. Those don't always come naturally.
No, but
plus he's up until this year he's a 12 shot attempt guy. Like you don't play through him, right? Like that's not rockets. He doesn't get enough touches because of you shoot the ball so well.
So let me ask you one more question. Sorry, I know Ravi hasn't talked yet.
No,
does that put a ceiling on this style of play?
If you don't have some dynamic individual guys, yes. Like you can play this kind of like DB was talking about. You can play this style because stylistically, like that Mo Watson team is a good example. They still wanted to do a lot of the same things that all these other versions of Creighton have done, but they had that extra added little bit, right? It's the thing that drove me crazy about Ryan Nembhard. He tried to do it all the time, and he wasn't quite there. He wasn't quite that guy in terms of his time at Creighton, at least, where he could do some of the things that Mo Watson could do. And so I do think there's, like, this is not rocket science here, but sometimes you just need better guys to run that style of play, or guys with a little bit different skill sets to run that style of play. And when you have that, I really do think it takes the ceiling off of the style of play. But sometimes you need some better guys. I think that's why they wanted Pop Isaacs, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I agree. They're a different team without him for sure. So, well, thanks guys.
Jesse, appreciate the call, buddy. No, I think you're right, because initially when you said easy, I'm like, oh man, they get a lot of open looks, but that's different than what you meant.
For sure.
And I understand what you mean for sure. I guess
I can make more layups over time.
Sure. Yeah.
Than I can threes, even though threes are worth more. I mean, it's just
there's less variance, right? It's the variance in the threes, right? You go 6 for 11 one half, you go 1 for 11 the next half.
What happens to Ash if you play through the post?
To Ashworth?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's not the same.
No,
it's not the same player.
This is part of the reason.
What happens to Neal if you play through the post?
Well, Neal's one of the only guys that can actually get to the rim.
If you play through the post.
If you play through the post, doesn't have a lot to do.
Yeah. You take away his ability to kind of slash and dribble the ball.
Although I do think
stylistically, it's a fantastic question.
I do think that's a little bit of a misnomer with slashers and post play, because if you know what you're doing, Mac does.
If the 2-man game is played with those two,
sure, yeah. But that's
often not because of Ashworth's role on the floor.
For sure, that's part of the reason. Again, and I hate to keep coming back to Fedor, but he does a lot of the things that you want him to do. We've seen him get to the basket. Now, can he do it consistently in more than 8 to 12 minutes a game? I don't know. We don't know that yet. And he's a good post-entry passer. You can play the 2-man game with Fedor.
I'll also say this, because I think it's a fantastic question.
It's a really good question.
When you're a 3-point shooting team, and let's say you go on a barrage, we saw it against Nova. We saw it in 2013. We saw it in 2014, where they're just capable of blowing the doors off. Once you get a lead, at what point are you subconsciously
taking gas off the pedal a little bit
of shooting 27-footers?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to stay on the gas when you're attacking.
Yeah, when you're chasing.
There's this feel that if you're shooting jump shots and you have a lead, you're settling or you're not.
Even if that's your identity.
Right.
This is how we got here.
It's a mindset, I think.
So
I got to think about that.
So a team that actually was better at getting easy shots than we give them credit for?
Who's that?
And they kind of get forgotten, was the 1920 team, because you had Mahoney and Damian Jefferson.
Yep.
Both could get into the lane. Then that opened things up for Kyrie and for Zagorowski.
You know what was funny about watching that team, though?
What's that?
I think there was this portion of the fan base that thought Creighton dribbled too much. It was getting a little icy dribbling the ball.
You need that sometimes.
I'm just saying.
No, I get it, but you need that sometimes.
It's in.
Or not, it wasn't Kyrie. It was Trey. It was Trey.
Trey. It's in.
Or Tyshawn. No, that was Tyshawn. That was Tyshawn Alexander.
So when we didn't think he was coming back that year and he had the good year?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Tyshawn and Mitch. So
watching that, it's like you feel like, oh my gosh, this isn't how we play.
Yeah.
It's effective.
Really effective. And they still kind of played the way, to me, that's one of the best teams I think Creighton's ever rolled out there.
1920?
Yes, because they were dynamic and can score in different ways, right? Now, if they ever had a real good big, you could get exposed a little bit because Christian Bishop was undersized. But that was a really, really good team.
And it's funny
how they could score in different ways.
Those guys just disbanded.
Yeah.
They all went
their separate ways. I mean, they everybody but Tyshawn came back the next year. That's when they made the Sweet 16. But that it's a really good question, and I think it applies to Nebraska too. I think part of the reason Nebraska has a lot of variance is they don't get a lot of easy shots. Juwan tries to, but he's hit and miss around finishing, right?
Yeah.
Bryce probably isn't quite aggressive enough. I asked you a question off air, and we've only got about a minute here before we get to Tim Verghese at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. But I asked you a question off air. I asked you, do you think Bryce Williams thinks he's as aggressive as Juwan Gary?
That's great. Yeah. I think he does think he's as aggressive as Juwan Gary, because I think his DNA is built to think we and not me.
So I think that's part of the problem, because if he already thinks he's as aggressive as Juwan Gary, he's not going to become more aggressive.
I think he does. I'm speculating.
I do too.
I can just tell by the way he plays.
I do too. That's kind of my point.
He's like, my guy's getting his too. Ooh, look at him getting down. We are the guys that got to make this go. So we are doing a good job. Because I think he's a wingman.
And that's the difference between a guy that's used to being a 1 and a guy that's used to being a 2 or a wingman. Right?
Yeah.
A guy that's used to being a 1 always thinks he needs to be more aggressive. I got to get a bucket here or we're in trouble. I got to get downhill here or we're in trouble. I got to do something here to stop this run this other team is on.
Even when Coach Hoiberg was lamenting about Bryce's play a couple days ago, he was like, and he's still doing it within the confines of being unselfish.
Yeah.
So there's still that ... caveat.
Extra little bit. Because sometimes, people don't like to say this, sometimes you need to be a little selfish.
That's an offense last night, though.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with Tim Verghese here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. We are here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill and joined now by Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, not too much. How are you guys doing?
We're trying to decide. You want to help settle a thought here?
Sure.
Is 14 points a lot in a basketball game if you have a lead?
In the first half, is 14 points a lot?
I don't think so. Not anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, 14 is the new 8.
Yeah. Like, if it's 14 with 5 minutes left, that's different than 14 4 minutes before half.
Right.
Like, that's a whole different deal there.
You're like, where are you guys going with that? TV, we're just solving all the world's basketball problems one analytic statistic at a time.
So,
that's all.
Tim, you're a certified ball knower, so I'm going to ask you this question we've kind of been working on all week, right? So I asked somebody on like Monday or Tuesday, and we've ended up asking this question about 800 times throughout the week. If you can, in light of the Super Bowl and kind of what we saw there, if you can consistently get pressure with 4, is there anything else in football you would take over that?
I don't think so. The only other thing I can think of, just in terms of dominating a game and managing time of possession and winning, is just consistently getting 5+ yards on the ground. Like, if I know I'm getting at least 5+ yards on the ground, that's the only other thing. But no, I think if you can get home with 4, I mean, it is truly a blessing. Like, and we've seen it in recent years. Like, truly, just like, hey, if you can consistently get home with 4, like the Eagles did, like, the 2 years where we're talking about, the Georgia dynasty and what Kirby was building, it was because of what they had up front. And so, and a lot of those same guys obviously played in the Super Bowl. Yeah. But yeah, if you can get home with 4, I like, because the only other thing I can think of is like a true lockdown corner or 2 true lockdown corners. But even then, we've seen that not work. We've seen that. But if you can get home with 4, yeah, it's really tough to defend that.
Tim, when you're kind of taking a look at what Nebraska's been able to do in the portal, and I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you are on the same page with the impact of high school newcomers. Like, I don't really see it. I think most of these guys are kind of a year or 2 away from impact, and that's not to be dismissive. I just think it's how Nebraska wants to play in year 3. And you pit it against what other schools have done in the portal, because obviously Nebraska has the good portal ranking, and I think they're in everybody's top, 5, 6, 7 in terms of portal additions. Are we talking about like the Big 4? Are we talking about Nawari? Are we talking about Pritchett? Are we talking about I'm forgetting
Keys,
Rocco, and Keys? Like, I mean, is that kind of the core? Maybe Desan McCullough. Some people add him, and I get it, but I'm not sure he would make my top 4. He's maybe 5. And I won't split hairs over that. Like, you could convince me otherwise. But however you put the 4, we're talking about just a base core group, right?
Right. I mean, I would have McCullough over Enwinari for now, just because of production to this point and what we've seen.
I'm with you. You.
But I get what you mean, because, like, again, hypothetically, if Enwinari is locked in and plays up to the player he is, we're talking about him a lot more at
I think
the season that we are.
The rankings of the portal are based on his rankings too. So I have to put that in there.
Right, for sure. And that's the thing. It's just, I think midway through the season, if Enwinari plays up to what his potential is, we're talking about him a lot more than we are talking about Dejan McCullough, even though Dejan McCullough is going to be an important piece for this defense. I just think that's the type of talent that Williams Enwinari is. But yeah, I think it's those 4. Again, I think if you're looking at, someone off that list, to potentially make that jump, I think Andrew Marshall is one to keep an eye on in the DB room. I think he's a guy that can play. Jameer Khan, potentially, whoever comes out of that DB room, whether it's him or Justin Rhett. And then the other one is just like who that second receiver is. Is it Isaiah Hunter? Is it Harley Gilmore? Is it someone else already on the roster? Probably going to be Ja'Cory Barney, in my opinion. I think those are going to be your top 2 receivers, with the collection of others contributing. But I agree with that top 4. Yeah, and I had that question this week in the mailbag of like, hey, which freshmen do you think make rules like 57? We talked about that 57 number. There's like 5 or 6 guys that even have a chance of actually realistically can make that. I don't think it's going to be that many freshmen in that 2-3 deep this year.
Cortez Mills, is he in that 5?
I think so. I think Cortez Mills, I think one, if not both, of Dawson Merritt and Christian Jones, and then Isaiah Mosey, one of the 2 running backs, if not both. And then you could make the argument for one of the 3, if not 2 of the 3 defensive linemen coming in. But they're all 3 are summer guys, which is tough.
This is zero disrespect to the ceiling. Merritt has a long way to go. And I say that because not only stylistically, but he's coming off putting his shoulder back together.
Right.
I mean, so we're talking about just to go through the rigor of conditioning and lifting and push-pulling with upper body strength. I don't know, man. Like his frame. I don't know. And it's not personal because I do like the upside, but I would say the same thing, and I'm around him all the time. I would say the same thing about CJ, right? Where, okay, if we're going to play inside, guards uncovered, shooting a shot, like it's going to take some time, even though I think his competitive stamina is at a super high level.
Right. That's why I think, like, for that reason, I think, and the injury, the lack of injury helps here. But I think Christian Jones has the better shot of making that top 57. But yeah, I mean, like again, adding Marquise Watson, Trent, and where that room is now, there's no pressure on either of those guys either. And I do forget, with Merritt too, it is coming off that injury, and I'm actually very interested to see how big he looks this spring. Like how much weight, if any, that he's put on, and where he's kind of standing before the season, because that's another big thing for me with him is just getting that weight up.
Tim, as we kind of look at transfer class versus incoming freshman class, is there, I don't know if concern is the right word, but has there been any thoughts on your, as you kind of look through this roster, about guys that you thought maybe from last year, 2024's freshman class, that would have gotten playing time this year that maybe are going to have to wait in line a little bit longer in light of the transfers?
I think the DB room is one where you're looking at where, it's just crowded, and it's like, okay, hey, I mean, the ideally these guys should be playing, but not anymore. And then again, the offensive line as well. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I think you'd like to be building depth the way they are right now, but kind of thought we would see, and still might, but kind of thought, Preston Tuamu, Gibson Pyle, those kind of guys would be competing for a starting interior spot. I think those opportunities are going to be limited for those guys, which is, again, not a bad thing. And I think, Donovan Raiola has those guys locked in to the point that, they're okay sitting for another year or rotating in for another year. But I think those 2 positions in particular are the ones that come to mind for me.
TV, I was saying, yes, just kind of thinking out loud this week, trying to press panic. I'm really not. Just food for thought on kind of how this works, because the NFL had to go through this period where they took some shots, and I think people that were watching the sport weren't in love with the physicality and tackling for a period of time in the NFL. And the players and coaches said, we've got to go through this transition period with the collective bargaining agreement, how frequently we can put on full pads, how mandatory camps work. We have to learn to manage this new era. I say all that to say, with colleges getting down to 105 and playing 13, some will play 14, 15, 16 games. How much data do you think we'll need to collect, or how much time do you think it will take to collect on whether that's a decent number for the style of play and the longevity of how long a season can take with 105 guys? Because my impression is that number will go somewhere to like 120, especially with like the new Title IX, kind of what's come out of Washington and things like that, where I don't know if 105 is enough if you want to be one of the 12 teams playing 15, 16, 17 games.
Right. I think 120, like, and that's just in general. I think that they should have done like something of like not a grandfather in, but like, kind of like a wind down period where you do cut it initially to 120 and then get down to 105. Like, I think we're going to do it essentially in reverse, where if you're talking about a timeline, I mean, probably similar to the portal, that they give it 3-4 years, or like, like the college football playoff as well, where they give it a couple of years to kind of evaluate and see. I think that's what we're in for. I think we're going to get at least 2 years of this 105 limit. And then
I just don't want to see the rash of injuries and have coaches say, hey, the wear and tear, or because I think there's this, and I don't know what the answer is. I do think coaches that can figure out how to ramp up rigor without tearing down bodies is going to be pretty important. Somewhere along the line, the whole working smarter versus harder thing, because I mean, 16 receivers running routes with comp squad versus getting ready, those numbers go in a hurry, man. You go 3-4 wide receiver set, like it. Do the math in your head. It's hard.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you look at the group they have right now, and what's kind of coming down the pipeline too. Like, and that's what's weird too. You look across team to team too. There's so many different strategies right now on how to best prepare these teams long term. I mean, every team has a somewhat different strategy for sleep and how they address that depending on the travel week. It's different in the ACC compared to the Big Ten, compared to the SEC, where there's a little different travel. There's different team to team as well. And for some rosters, like there's some that are like, hey, 105 is like a luxury for us. Like we're building up to, we have 105 spots. But for a team like Nebraska, it's like, oh, this really hurts our depth. This really like cuts into our depth. And so that's how a lot of Power 4 teams are. So there's both sides of it, where I think it's just there's going to be a lot of tweaking. There's going to be a lot of different strategies that come out. Ultimately, again, we talk about process over results. Some of the right process may end up leading to bad results and vice versa. So I'm curious to see how each team approaches this limit moving forward, especially these rosters where, okay, like with Nebraska right now, you're fine with the wide receiver numbers where they're at because your top end, hypothetically, at least on paper, is very, very good. But those teams that aren't, those teams where, hey, our receivers are a collective, man, you need to be deep. Like you have to be deep when you've got a collective of receivers and you don't have a clear top 3 that is really good. Same thing at running back. So some of those teams at the lower end that are dealing with those depth things.
Backs is another good one.
Yeah.
Are you going to give good looks?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, like you can't, like hypothetically you want to build multiple body types in your running back room so you can give your defense different types of looks depending on the opponent. You can't do that anymore.
Tim, I sometimes wonder if we make too much of the numbers, because I compare it to the NFL, right? We go 53, like comparing it to what Nebraska's been at, it's a dramatic decrease. But the NFL, they go 16 games, 17 games now. They've gone 16 games forever. It's a 53-man roster, 17-man practice squad. That's 70 guys. Is it the fact that they can complete transactions, and so the number of different guys that are actually on a practice squad or a roster over the course of the season is way higher than that 70? Or are we just not used to the constraints, so it feels like it's strangling us?
I think it's just the not used to it. Like that's the thing. Like I said, I think there's going to be more of that as we get into spring and through the summer and into the season, where some teams see the 105 as a luxury and some teams see it as a constraint, and it's just solely dependent on how you built your roster leading up to the season. And so I think hypothetically the 105 is probably fine for most teams. Like, again, there's going to be some depth issues at certain programs. You're going to see that, especially with how just long the seasons are. I mean, like, look at Notre Dame this year, like what they had to deal with along their offensive line. Most teams aren't built for that type of loss and are capable of picking up, where you can have a guy like Rocco Spindler step up and be your starter for the next 12, 13 games. You could have your starting left tackle go down and then come back at the very end of the season and play through a pectoral tear. Like it's just not normal. And so, there's going to be some teams that, hey, 4 games into the season, oh man, we're just not going to, we don't have it this year. We just don't have the depth. There's no way we can make a run like we thought we could just because we don't have the depth. But then there's going to be other teams that have the 105 and are like, oh wow, we have like a lot more and we can go deeper at certain positions than we ever have before because we have 105 scholarship spots.
You know what's funny is and maybe it has something to do with how far they got. I get that. Mm-hmm. But for how much we value the position, it's amazing how dismissive we are that Nebraska was able to go 8-9 deep in their offensive line and function at a relatively
we didn't really notice.
We didn't really notice. We didn't talk about them playing their 8th or 9th offensive lineman, and it's such a coveted position group. And I still, TV, don't think Donnie got enough credit for seamlessly doing that. Because when those younger guys were playing, we weren't talking about issues with the offensive line.
Yeah, like nobody thought Gunnar Gatula was going to play coming into the year.
It's like, oh, that was nice, and I said no disrespect, but Nebraska was winning games in the Big Ten with Gunnar Gatula. Mm-hmm. Right, he's a year ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
minimum.
At least a year. Yeah, at least a year. There's a chance he doesn't start this year. Like there's a real like.
And we're very, very dismissive of that.
Yeah. For sure. Like the conversation on Donovan Raiola is interesting because on one hand, like for me, like I framed it this way earlier this week. I think this is the offseason. The line has to make a bit of a jump from this like solid to good, at least good, and be a good unit here in 2025. But then on the recruiting side of things, yeah, there've been some misses recently. I think there's some pressure mounting there, but at the same time, I don't think you can dismiss, how quiet, I guess, the room is competent. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the best way to put it, is the room turned from, at times incompetent under the previous staff to, hey, they're competent. They can run a couple of positions deep. If you had lost some guys along the interior of the line, you probably would have felt comfortable with the Gibson Pyle stepping into playing time. Probably would have felt comfortable with the Sam Sledge stepping into playing time. And this year, you feel even more comfortable. Yusuke Torres, Preston Tuamu, like you have guys, and you have depth. Grant Briggs along the interior too. Like you have depth along the interior. Your tackle spots are for sure worrisome, just in the sense that you don't have the depth that you would ideally like, but you have bodies and you have capable bodies where, hey, this could be a good unit. It's just the pressure's kind of on Donnie to kind of get this group to take that next step, but overall, yeah, like you're saying, I don't think at the same time he's gotten enough credit for making that room competent.
We're talking to Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, we had the combine invites go out yesterday, I believe. Any surprises there for you in who got invited and maybe who didn't?
Yeah, no. There's obviously the fact that no Nash is pretty surprising for me. I'm not surprised Isaiah Nair made it. I just feel like this is going to be one of those things where NFL teams are just going to fall in love with the combination of size and speed. That's how it works. That's the NFL. It's a size, height, weight, speed league, and so and he had a good day at the Shrine Bowl. Like he kind of showed strong. Like people talk about his hands and all of that. He showed stronger hands at the Shrine Bowl than he did at Nebraska, as weird as it sounds. So like we'll see how he tests the combine, but that's a guy that I think is going to get drafted. Tommy Hill, not surprised that he made it. I still think I know there was I think the general consensus from people in this fan base is that he had a bad week. Talking to people, there was for sure some bad reps and some really bad reps that got magnified, but there were some really good reps in that week too. And there were teams that left that week feeling like he's a guy that they can still draft in the 4th or 5th or even 6th round at this point. I think he needs to cut some weight. I think he came in a little too heavy. I think he needs to be 100% healthy because I think some of the lost reps is just clearly just being unable to fully plant and turn. So if he's 100% healthy, I think the combine should go better for him. But yeah, I think national making it's tough. Like it really sucks. But at the flip side, what's overall I think going to be a good thing for Nebraska, I think you're going to see more interest in Nebraska's pro day than we have in a couple of years.
Yeah. So TV, I'm not outwardly petty, but quietly I am very much a receipt keeper. So the DMs that I have like blown up, you're laughing because you already know where I'm going with this. Number one, it was all the guys that told me that the only reason I said Raiola was a good offensive line coach is because I wanted to get Dylan. And people were up in arms that coach kept Donnie to begin with. And I said, I gave the analogy of, open your checkbook and see what your money's spent on. Like, that's where your interests are. And then I said, compare that to talking about how many times you actually talked about the offensive line as being an issue when Nebraska lost. It was next to none. So I understood why Coach Rule wanted to retain Donnie. The other is, and it was about a succession of 3 weeks with Nair, because when I came back from the first couple of practices, I said, I think Nair is a Sunday talent. Like that dude is a Sunday talent. Long arms, he's fast. Man, TV, he went through a stretch in the middle of this season where you'd have thought I said so a guy's mom was like destitute or something. It was vitriol. And I'm like, okay. So when I saw the combine list come out, the first person I texted was Ravi. And I was like, I'm going in tomorrow. I'm taking my victory lap on Nate. No, I'm just playing. No, I did say that, but I'm not going to. But I think you're right. And I love how you said it.
He's going to test really well.
It's just how the NFL goes. Now, the other thing about Tommy Hill that I'll say is the one thing that he's going to have to do has nothing to do with physical. He just has to show guys that he's willing to hang in there and he loves playing. If he can do that, he'll figure out a way to play because he can play a little bit of inside. And he could be a nickel guy. I don't know how much he can play outside the numbers unless he does what you said in terms of changing, his
body type,
a little bit. But he's got range in there with his weight. He's one of those guys that I think gave the staff pushback about playing. I never called him by name, but he's the one guy. I said, we had a guy play at 172 2 years ago in Power 5 football in the secondary. It's Tommy Hill. And so the next year when he comes back and he's maintaining weight at 202, I was like, how is this dude a 202-pounder? So I think he has some range there that he can play with. I don't worry about that. I just worry, or I hope, that he's committed to playing because if he is, he's got plenty of talent.
Yeah, I agree. And he's a guy for me, that's what the league's kind of looking for in corners these days, and DBs specifically. And so, you like the length, you like all of that. And with Nair, I'll say this too, because I've noticed it in this fan base and other fan bases too. Like this happens time and time again where the draft comes around and they're like, wait, that guy's getting drafted? Like he didn't even do all that, And it's like, one, you should be celebrating the fact. Yeah, like you should celebrate the fact that your university is producing draftable talent. And two, understand that the league and the way they evaluate talent is not solely just off production. It's off of traits. And again, everyone's fast in the NFL. Everyone's big in the NFL. If you can find the big fast guys, you go get those big fast guys. And you look at this draft, there's not a whole lot of big fast receivers. So Isaiah Nair is going to get drafted, and I think it's going to surprise some people. And they're going to be like, wait, what the heck? But at the end of the day, if you want to reduce it down to this, it's another draft pick for Nebraska. That's that. If you don't want to be mad about it, you can just consider it. Hey, it's another statistic. It's another recruiting graphic that goes out.
That's our guy Tim Verghese inside Nebraska. Tim, appreciate it as always. Good
Thanks,
stuff.
TV.
Appreciate y'all.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We've got still some, our Friday regulars coming up at 9. I realize I never set up the show. So 9 o'clock, we'll have our guy Mike Sautter. Lots going on to talk about with Mike. Husker basketball. You mentioned high school wrestling. We've got high school hoops, just Miller North getting a big win last night. No big deal. And then at 9:45, of course, we'll talk to our guy, Matt Vrzal. The last FCC guardrailed Matt Vrzal interview.
He's going to go out.
That's fine.
Guns blazing.
We'll tell you more about that in the next segment, DB. But, I was having, I'm kind of going through all the headlines and things like that. And there's some of them, these shows, a lot of times we don't get to a lot of things that we talk about, right? And one of the things, though, that came down a couple days ago was Matt Patricia getting hired I
wanted to talk to TV about that.
As the DC at Ohio State. And that comes on the heels of Ryan Grubb going back to college, being the OC down in Alabama with his guy, Kalen DeBoer, reunited, and it feels so good. And then also Chip Kelly heading back to the NFL as a coordinator for the Raiders after being the OC for your national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. But I'll start with Patricia. That's a guy who I believe hasn't called plays since 2017.
Yeah, one of the things I want to talk to TV about was because he and I were kind of in agreement because he dropped it last week. He's like, yeah, talks with Patricia, and I don't know about that. And I always wondered about, like Day, and because he's kind of an I told you so guy, and he's quick to kind of, hey, now what? Maybe Patricia, because I was trying to think about how other people are thinking, right? So maybe Patricia for him is this fresh, gruff guy that helps keep him on edge.
Keep him hungry?
Keep him on edge, too, with his personality. Because I do think we kind of undersell the importance of personality traits, right? You always want an all-in-one, but
sure,
most of us aren't like that.
Yeah.
So maybe Patricia's a guy for him that fits what they need. Now I will be curious to see how, Patricia meshes with what else happens on the defensive coaches in that staff. Because as an NFL guy, what you do is you let your position coaches coach.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's ideal for a guy like Larry Johnson, who's a little longer in the tooth, a little more set in his ways.
Sure.
Hey, we want to play this style.
Mm-hmm.
Go get the guys ready to do this. It's easy for me to say that because our head coach coaches our D-line.
Mm-hmm.
So he has final say anyway. But it is cool that he's very hands-off of some of the back-end stuff. And he'll say, this is how I want to play. You guys figure out the rest. I'll teach him how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Patricia can be that kind of guy for a guy like Larry Johnson. But a very, very, very interesting hire.
Yeah.
From a relate to young people standpoint.
So, oddly enough, there is some overlap, I think, with the direction Nebraska decided to go with John Butler as their DC.
All ears.
So, I think one of the things we weren't totally sure about coming from the NFL for John Butler was how he would relate and communicate to younger people. So I think there's an overlap there. The other thing that I think there's an overlap, you brought this up with the personality types. Maybe John Butler, maybe the reason he ends up getting that job over guys with more recent coordinating experience or coordinating experience currently sitting defensive coordinators is because there was something about his personality that Coach Rule felt the staff needed.
I'm with you. I can't remember how much I shared about DC's on the table or not. So I don't know if you have a cheat code. But
no, I know that
I 100% agree with you.
So I think I don't know. I think that I think Simons at SMU was legitimately in play.
So there's two things I like about what you said.
Okay.
Number one, you're remembering that in the press conference, Coach Rule very much likes the way Nebraska practiced.
Mm-hmm.
The attention to detail, the being able to be multiple. You also know that he's like, I want an answers guy, not like this isn't what we do, so we're gonna do it. I want a guy that
is like, this is who we have, this is what we're good at. Let's figure out.
Or the game is actually unfolding
differently than.
So this is what's next.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from a wants thing, Butler checks a lot of those lists.
Mm-hmm.
Seen multiple looks, multiple fronts. He is familiar with how Nebraska practices in terms of their preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing, for all the hand-wringing and consternation about Nebraska defensively, you seldom saw a team be able to do the same thing for over
the entire game,
the course of a game.
That's fair.
Right? I mean, you have your outlier in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
But even
Ohio State.
And
who won the national title, by the way.
The Illinois game was played in phases. It was played in punch, counter punch.
Yeah, because there was a point in that Illinois game where it looked like Nebraska was going to blow them out.
Yeah.
And then Illinois made some adjustments.
Yeah.
And they were able to climb back in. And then Nebraska made some adjustments. Looked like they were going to win the game.
Yep.
Right? Weren't able to execute on a couple things.
So rarely do you see UCLA is another good example. I mean, UCLA got off to that blazing start, and you're like, oh, fudge. then the second half happened, and you're like, okay, well done with the dry erase board.
Mm-hmm.
But
who's the receiver for Illinois that killed him early?
Oh,
is it two? Number two?
It's maybe Franklin. Was it Franklin?
Franklin, yeah. So it looked like all day.
Dang, just putting your boy on the hot seat, man. Sometimes I can't remember.
You remember stuff. It's fine.
Okay. Cool.
Wasn't there like an O'Brien or Bryant or something?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So it looked early like those two guys were just going to feast on Nebraska, right?
Hitting outside the numbers.
Like
Tommy Hill kind of hit the skids
just
early.
Eating whatever they wanted. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, God, is this going to get ugly? And then an adjustment was made. That didn't really end up being the deal that beat him. I
saw it against Ohio State, too. You gave that as an example.
Yeah.
Like, that was really cool to watch because I can actually get confirmation on what I'm seeing.
And Jeremiah Smith only beat him really the once, right?
And, it's not like I'm going back to ask, but that's just one of those. He had, Caleb had traveled.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came home Sunday, and I'm on the rewatch in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll blurt something out, and he's like, nah, it's actually this. Or, yeah, that's pretty good. How'd you know? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I can get confirmation on the punch, counter punch.
Sure.
And that was one of those times where, and I can say this now because he's, whatever. And I said, hey, I texted coach. I said, I don't normally do this, right? I don't. And I hate having to preface it, but he and I have a good relationship, so I didn't want to be stepping on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to walk me through the difference between staying in cover 2 here
mm-hmm.
and cover 3 here when you turn Jeremiah loose. And had a really good. He's like, no, this is Coach White. He's like, no, DB, this is good stuff. Like, this is what I like as a coach. Let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I could come back and speak with some sort of confidence on the punch counter punch thing, because that's what I like. And I'll tell you this, when it comes to hiring, and maybe this is where Patricia
mm-hmm.
is going to be good. It's such a well-coached league.
Mm-hmm. Big Ten?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the ability to counter punch and get up off the deck when it's something you're not accustomed to seeing, or having the other staff know that you have a tendency to do X so they hit you with Y,
mm-hmm. is
very, very understated.
Yeah.
And I think when he says he wants a solutions guy, you take guys, you're trying to surround yourself. That's what Addison Williams says, coordinator experience.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a meeting of the minds and it's a philosophical thing, you can come together and have another peer.
Mm-hmm. Because you got 4 guys on that staff that have been defensive coordinators?
You have peers that you can bounce ideas off of. And ultimately, I think that's what you want, especially when you have a guy or a gal, whomever is in that position of leadership, that's the hammer dropper.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have all the good ideas we want to. We can go back and forth, but okay, we're going to do it like this.
Now we're going to go.
It's cool to have a lot of smart guys, but you need to have the hammer.
Yeah.
So and maybe that's a thing for Patricia where he's seen a lot, and maybe you just put relationship builders around him. Because I don't want to say I don't know the guy from a can of paint, but I don't know if I'm sending Patricia into anybody's home.
So that's kind of the funny thing about coordinator jobs in college football now.
Hey, apparently not. They're not recruiters.
It's like, don't know that you have to be a great relationship builder anymore.
Unless you're Zach Smith. Or not Zach Smith.
That's a different
Heartland.
Guy. Yeah. But
because he's going to be an OC that can go in your living room.
Well, but he's also not going to call plays, right? I think Ryan Day said he was going to take it back.
That's what the word on the street
You know
is.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's a different role for him. But how many guys have we looked at who are like, oh, don't worry, he's not going out on the road. Or, oh, don't worry, the position coach will take care of it, right? Like, even Dana Holgerson's a good example of this. Like,
you think Braden hasn't seen multiple run schemes?
Yeah, I think Holgie's just their Coach Ball. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a entirely different job than it was even about 3 years ago.
Which is amazing.
And I think that's why
I agree with you.
I think that's why it's attracting different types of people to those jobs as well. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and we're brought to you by our friends over at Centris Federal Credit Union. I've been telling you all month, everybody's talking about Valentine's Day. Everybody's talking about, oh, got to celebrate love. But what if you don't love your current situation with your financial institution, right? Yeah. You got to look some other places, and one of those places should definitely be Centris Federal Credit Union. Get to centrisfcu.org to talk to one of their experts, see what they have to offer. Regardless of what your needs are, their experts can walk you through how their services match up with what you need from a financial institution. Make sure you go to centrusfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. DB.
What's up?
You know, we got a little news of our own.
We do.
Going to change formats here a little bit at Hurrdat Sports.
Slippery. Let's go.
Coming up on Monday, if you haven't heard, if you haven't been paying attention to the stream or on our social media channels, we will be moving to a fully digital product on Monday. That means you can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, of course on your podcast. You can also catch us on hurrdatsports.com, where the show will be streamed live as well. But it will be a fully digital experience now. Coming soon also, because I know people are like, oh, how am I going to listen in my car? Coming very soon, we will have an app that you can connect to your Bluetooth in your car, just like you would a podcast, and listen live from the app as well. It's going to be great stuff. We're going to, down the line, have a more expanded product as well. But this is a thing that
did a lot of studying.
Yes, a lot of studying on where our listeners are already, the type of content that they want and that they consume at the most frequent levels. And we're like, okay, how do we bring more of what you want to you? And this is where we landed.
Yeah, and I mean, full disclosure too, it's kind of interesting for me as we've had to spend a month or month and a half or however long, like listening to other digital only successful shows.
Yeah.
It's kind of eye-opening too to meet people right where they're at.
Yeah.
I'm not just you guys know, like, this is just off, this is real. I mean, it's me. I just told you I had to pray for strength to make a run that everybody thinks I was actually pretty good, but I wasn't. So it's just like, it's not that funny.
It's a little funny.
It's really not that funny. I felt a little vulnerable. Little naked. Just to be able to control like inventory and tempo.
Yeah.
Is interesting.
It's a big deal.
Right.
Because there was, we would have loved to have that conversation about Matt Patricia with Tim. We ran out of time, had to move on. Like there's going to be opportunities here to get more of what you want.
Or our commercials are our commercials.
Yeah. Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this. It's a big deal. So we did a lot of studying. That's what's happening starting Monday. It's still going to be a show that you love. It's just going to be more of it and more of the things you love. So make sure you stay tuned. If you got any questions, hit either one of us up on Twitter. I'm at R.A. Lulla. That's at Damon Benning. Or hit up at Hurrdat Sports on Twitter as well. We'll answer whatever questions you have. But I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of them because about 95% of you already listen this way anyway. So I think we're going to be all good, and we're super excited about the move as well.
Big deal.
I can't let Game Dog. There's this thing called stat broadcast, and because it's not his fault. But I try not to say too many things off the cuff. So we're going back into this conversation of controlling things for a certain amount of game time.
Sure.
And making adjustments.
Sure.
And I said, well, there's kind of this outlier in Indiana, then there's this counterpunch thing, and so USC comes up.
Mm-hmm.
It says USC pretty much controlled the game. There were no real adjustments made. Go back, and it's too much for radio, but there's this cool little thing called stat broadcast that does things by the quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see like punts and touchdowns and time of possession. And then there's this other really neat thing that happens, like when you watch and you see like Woody Marks and kind of inside run game and guys running over routes and then blocking number twos and how they kind of shake free for a wide open touchdown because of a look.
Sure.
Or when a quarterback kind of scrambles and throws a 50-50 ball, or a guy quits on a route, or you're in cover 3 or something like that. Like all those things happen like when you like watch and you don't just go by the stats. But Nebraska made plenty of adjustments in that game for USC. Now, if you said, they're fortunate Marks got a little dinged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I actually think this has nothing to do with anything except it's Marks. I actually think he's closer to whoever drafts Woody Marks is getting
a good one.
Yes. Yeah.
So you know what's funny?
Do yourself a go back and watch that game.
Yeah.
It's not a no business game, but it was one where you left and you're thinking, that was totally on you.
Yeah.
Oh, they let my V off the hook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I remember early how many we came back and I go, hey, he threw 4 interceptable balls in the first 2 series.
Yeah. Let him. It was.
And that's besides the one that was actually intercepted, right?
Yeah. If you really want, see if you need some Dramamine.
Say
the Drammy for your mammy.
Yeah.
But back to the digital platform thing. I'm actually excited. I've never been in a position where we actually can control the inventory.
We own everything. It's all ours.
That's
a big deal.
Isn't that why the McAfee's? Isn't that why those guys do that?
100%. That was, it's funny the thing about McAfee because
I'm not gonna lie, I was like, wait, huh?
Everybody thinks he sold out to ESPN. ESPN kowtowed to him. You hear?
Sure did.
Like he swears on that show.
Sure did.
Like he said
he's the only one that gets.
He called terms.
Yeah, and like he first of all he called out the brass. Now we wouldn't do that because we work very closely with ours.
I was like, we like our brass, but yeah,
they get the only disclaimer to start the show.
Hey, it's an adult show. Whatever. Yeah, they used to have that with at the beginning of the Bill Simmons podcast when it was on ESPN. Hey, this is going to be an adult conversation. There's going to be some language, whatever. But it's the controlling your own inventory and being able to call your own shots is a really big deal. And I think that's the way the world is moving. But it's kind of funny.
I'm not going to kid you though. I do like having more freedom of time, but I'm probably more excited about monetization.
Well, sure.
It's
yeah.
exciting.
I'm not going to kid you.
Makes the world go around. So what's funny though is you're talking about like if somebody was going to push back on the narrative that the same thing didn't beat Nebraska all the time, I actually would have gone to because I know we talked about the punch counter punch in Illinois. You know what I would have gone to it in the Illinois game?
What QB run game?
No, the goal line.
Oh yeah,
the goal line rub routes.
Nebraska not getting out of I'd entertain that.
That's the thing that I was like, hey, make an adjustment.
Yeah, that's a great point because
the game as a whole, I agree.
I spent a ton of time with 2 knuckleheads in the secondary going over what actually happens here. Like, hey, how does this happen?
3 times.
Exactly.
3 times.
Yep. In a very similar formation.
Yeah, it was almost identical. Yeah. Right. And so that's
I get the third time where he put Brian in the backfield. He came from the fullback spot.
So it was a different look.
And sometimes defenses count like dangerous. Like, are we counting him as a vertical threat?
As a threat, yeah.
So you have to go through those rules. But
it's kind of like
that's a good one.
Ironically, it's kind of like the Lindenmeyer play where
you're such an Illinois honk. Who told you to say that? Evan?
Nobody.
Evan?
No, I can't.
Evan texted you and
he really didn't. I'll show you.
Evan said, "Hey, bring up situationally Illinois." I know he did.
No, he actually
yes, Black Evan text you.
Wannabe Evan
to say that.
I'll show you my phone. He didn't text me that.
By the way, you know what's funny about the whole cornrow thing in Evan?
What's that?
Whitney Street Blues.
Yeah.
Slaughter Brothers. Slaughter Brothers.
Listen, he likes his. I told you it's a chicken shack story.
Yes. Okay, don't retell it.
Hey, where's Reagan?
My man DK asked me about timeout this morning. These dudes are funny.
No, it was. But yeah. So if you want to get on about adjustments and things like that, like bring something like that up.
Yeah.
Right. Where it was literally the same play 3 times. But it's funny. Also in that game when you're talking about counting guys and lining guys up in different spots, why is the reason Lindenmeyer was wide open?
All right.
The exact same thing that Illinois ended up doing to them with Bryant. He was lined up in a different spot. It was a guy in a spot you weren't used to seeing. That's the reason Lindenmeyer was wide open on the ball that Dillon overthrows him on that would have won Nebraska the game. Like it's the exact same thing that happened to Nebraska in overtime.
Yeah.
Is they put him in the backfield. He leaked out in a way that they didn't expect because they're counting. Like, so there was a really good counter punch to that game. But if you want to hit me besides Indiana, if you want to hit me with something that, hey, Nebraska didn't adjust to that, that's the first thing I'd go to.
And I really, some of that stuff is just interesting too, because there's the whole execution versus ownership thing. Coaching is player deal. Because I do think one thing that fresh eyes in Nebraska will really help with is individual accountability. Because there's no previous there is no history or track record.
Sure.
Well, that's just such and such. That's kind of what they do.
This is kind of what he does. You're gonna get the good with the bad.
Like a fresh. I really am probably the most excited or about like fresh eyes,
because benefit of the doubt actually cuts both ways.
It does.
We say it like it's a good thing, like, oh, we give them the benefit of the doubt.
But typically though, because I'm pro player,
Mhm.
I want the players to wipe their slate clean first.
Sure.
Because it's harder for them. Number one, they're younger, not as experienced. Number two, they carry a little more baggage,
Mhm.
Of success versus failure.
Because let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead.
If you want to function at a high level, you got to have a short memory. It can't just be for corners.
It's got to be for everybody. Because let me ask you this. Thomas Fedoni, who also got invited to the combine, probably going to get drafted as well.
I'm going to take a lap on that one, too.
But
Victory.
when Dana Holgerson came in, Thomas Fedoni got the benefit of the doubt a lot, I think. And then we saw a lot of Lindenmeyer. We saw a lot of Borkacher, of guys that were playing better at the time, right? So the benefit of the doubt can cut both ways.
Yeah.
Maybe with Tommy Hill as well, another guy that's probably going to get drafted, and Nebraska fans are going to be frustrated.
Call on Fedoni.
More Hurrdat Sports coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by our Friday friend Mike Sautter from Hurrdat Sports and NEBPreps. What's going on, Mike?
Is this the cussing one yet?
Monday.
Hey, shoot your shot. You can do anything once, buddy. Shoot your shot. Hey, by the way, how
fudge?
It's not that funny. Sorry.
It was funny.
Is it because there's a duration of where he didn't use that? Because he said that 4 weeks ago, and you lost your mind.
It's low key because I thought he was actually going to say it today. And so when he went to fudge, it caught me off guard.
Next week.
Jerome, how thin have you been spread these last handful of days?
It's
you had Nebraska, Omaha,
Creighton on
high school.
Yeah.
Which this is the furthest but closest you've been to high school in a long time. Do you like the college thing too?
Yeah, I enjoy it. Right. I enjoy all of it, but gosh, Damon, you always get me.
Hang in there.
There's like deep in my soul, right, is the high school stuff. And I'm just missing stuff. It's hard. It's hard for me to be away from it as much as I am. I'm trying very hard to follow it, to go back and watch it. Like I got home last night at 12:30. I went right to work on YouTube, finding the Westview and Millard North game so I could watch the last 10 minutes of that game.
And shout out to Huddle and how they do their broadcast for high school hoops, which made it amazingly easy.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, it is fun. It is a far new challenge. I've never stretched myself like I am right now, as far as just the amount of games and where I'm going and how I'm trying to do everything. I've never done that. And I like to think I work pretty hard. But I've never, we're going to be at 66 college basketball games this season, if everything, goes according to plan, and 53 of them in person, along with high school stuff. And games I have to go to and attend, and, state tournaments coming up and all of that. So I am very much so thin, but I am also very, kind of like feeling some type of way about not being able to be at 4 or 5 or 6 high school games a week like I normally am. But it's a new challenge, one that I created, I guess, for myself and wanted to do because the time I felt was right. So, but it's been, it's been fun to kind of follow the different college teams and try and track everything. And there's more analytics, there's more numbers, there's more data available. So it does make it a little bit easier. rather than the high school side where you just have to like, hey, can you send me the box score because you, for some reason, won't put it into the one system that where all that stuff is supposed to go. Yeah. It drives me nuts, by the way. Like, I don't understand. Like, I will never understand why high school coaches can't put the stuff into the format that is there for them to put it into when like 90% of the state does it, but you feel like it gives you an unfair competitive advantage, even though that you're going to trade film with coaches and you're also going to probably scout live in person. Like, what do you mean unfair advantage? I don't know. It works for every other level of sports, like NBA and college basketball, every level of college basketball. Everyone has their stats available, but you, that person in whatever town in Nebraska, it just gives you an unfair advantage. No, how about you coach a little better?
That's not exactly. I thought you were going to put a bow on that bad boy, but
no, it's a lazy excuse. It's just a lazy excuse.
It's a fair point. I mean, like if every college in the country can do it.
So the one thing, and I'm not here. I listen. I'm going to give you your flowers. Most men don't get them while they're alive, so I don't want to rain on your parade. But I will say, the collegiate pro analogy, I think it works to the counterpoint because there's high school coaches that don't do that will say if being anonymous is their advantage, like those leagues that you mentioned are already out in public anyway, so everybody knows, so there's no harm, no foul. If you're at the high school level and you're kind of flying under the radar, you don't want to give. You know what I mean?
Can I make an argument though?
Sure. That's what this show is, right?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. You're talking about Division I college basketball is already all out there. But every other division.
Don't think I didn't go to work on Jacob Heck yesterday. Okay. So,
but like that's what I mean. Like NAI programs, D2, D3s, like the stats go a long way, and they still all do it. Like it's not, they don't have the same. Like everybody doesn't know.
Okay.
Like a lot of those games are on YouTube now, but so are the high school ones.
I just gave this dummy dap on air. That's like that's not gonna happen a ton.
If anything, and David brings up a good point. I think the lack of stats.
Would you stop saying that when you introduce his statements?
He made a good point. What am I supposed to do?
You love that dude.
That's because
it's a great point. It's a great point, David. I have the chat.
He usually rides with me. No, it does hurt the kids. Like if you can't find, I've recruited kids at a college level before.
Everybody loves David.
And if I can't find their stats, that hurts them and me trying to recruit them, right? Like that's a real thing.
Double high.
Right. And I will say selfishly, like if I'm wanting to talk about a kid or write something on a kid or something to that effect, I shouldn't have to wait 12 or 24 hours for the coach to email me back like the stats. I should just be able to go find it because I can find it for like 90% of everybody else.
And for the love of God, it's 2025. All right. Like this isn't 1999 where it's like you got to wait and, wait for them to publish it in the newspapers or whatever. Like just put it online. It's not that hard, guys.
Yeah. In the actual system that the state,
set up for that to be done with,
Yeah.
All right, Jerome, we're having these conversations about like styles and overexposure and kind of maximizing minutes and keeping the fire in the fireplace and not out in the forest. Like, and we were talking about Nebraska basketball last night and kind of how, what was the real impact of Berke not playing and plus minus and Mia's minutes and exposure for Morgan and things like that. Did you realize, I guessed, so I was, it was a Bon Jovi, right? Something about a prayer.
Living on a prayer.
That Morgan averaged 23 and some change at his previous stop. And last night he gets to the 30-minute mark. And the only reason this came up is because I thought he was kind of being unfairly criticized for his defensive prowess because we just were looking at it in a vacuum. When you're evaluating and you're watching, do you pay attention to context like that? Like maximizing and limits and all that? Or are you just watching real time and kind of doing your thing?
Yeah, no, I've seen that and talked to people about, when he's on the floor, he's, last or whatever defensively. But I will say he makes a pretty big impact on the floor for Nebraska. I will also say last night, and I'm not going to throw a fellow bald man from Nebraska under the bus at all, because I think he does a terrific job, who may or may not be a referee. But I do think that two of Morgan's fouls were not good calls at all. He was straight up, in my opinion. He was bailing out. Dude was dropping a shoulder into his chest, which is what he should do. It's probably, those two calls were pretty critical, and they probably should have been either a no call or a charge, in my opinion. Frankly, I think Mia's actually played okay, like in the last couple of games in the minutes he's gotten. They needed him last night. Nebraska did, because Berke was out. As much as Berke frustrates me, and has throughout the year by, inexplicably just throwing the ball out of bounds to the front row, or getting, thinking he got fouled and doesn't get back on defense, and just attitude stuff. They needed him last night. And frankly, in my opinion, if he plays last night, I think Nebraska wins that game by 5-10 points.
Okay, but help me with this, though, because I heard that. How does Nebraska get stops keep guys from turning the corner with Berke? Is it the hedge? Is it he's the no middle guy, line of last defense? Like, what makes you say that?
He's on a ball screen, he can hedge pretty hard. He's done that, pretty, I think, effectively at times this year, where he just hedges.
That automatically slows down guys just being able to turn the corner.
Right. Because last night, Maryland.
A lot of corner turning.
Yeah, there's a lot of that last night.
Well, he just moves a little bit better, right? So when he hard hedges, he doesn't feel as exposed out there, and he feels like he can recover. Whereas Morgan and Mia both, I feel like, are hesitant to commit to the hard hedge.
I feel like we're being a little disingenuous, guys. If I'm with Queen or Reese and I'm on that screener and I'm the hedge guy, I'm not excited to leave either guy. So I could see where they just want to show.
Correct. And I think that was part of the problem last night, because Queen, he is really good. He is really good.
So that's the wild card here.
Sautter. Killing that mouthpiece aside, like Steph Curry.
Yeah.
I love everything else about him. Like, I like the random haircut. I like the no hairline. I like how he looks like he just got out of bed. He kind of gives me like my breast stinks vibe. Like he just looks like a dude.
Yeah, like Juwan tried to guard him last night, and Juwan did the best he could last night on it. I mean, that dude is a monster. He's huge. There's not a lot you're gonna do with that, and that's why I think having Berke, the other body, who Fred Hoiberg in the post game last night said is, quote, probably their best defender in the post defender. Missing him was pretty critical in that game, because they needed that extra size, another body. They just couldn't slow down Queen and Reese and his elbows going into people all the time.
I think we sleep on Rice.
No, their guards. I mean, their guards were fantastic last night too. There wasn't a lot. Frankly, like, Maryland is really talented, and I had this discussion with a few different people after the game last night about, they could make a run, Sweet 16 or whatever. And I'm like, the talent is there. They are awfully immature. So I don't think that's
typical Kevin Willard team.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because Willard just kind of lets guys do whatever. He's always been that way. It just lets guys just say what they want.
If I want to see lack of discipline, I'm just going to watch this current team. I don't need Willard to do
that. They were, and that's kind of the thing with Maryland. Their guards are really good, and their forwards are really good. They have zero bench, and somehow those guys play without fouling and fouling out, which is, I don't know how, because they're pretty physical and can be. at times, not all the time. It also.
I watched Rutgers a week or so ago, and I think 4 guys had 4 fouls on both teams. So it's like, I don't know. It's. Ravi said something the other day I thought was interesting. He made the case to me about this a year ago, where he said when Nebraska fans complain about officiating, it's almost like they don't watch other conferences. And I'm like, no, yeah, they do. He's like, no, I think you'd be surprised. I don't think a lot of Nebraska fans spend time watching other conferences. Do you think that's true when we're always talking about officiating?
Yeah, I think I think that's probably pretty fair, to be honest. They don't.
I think that's a lot of fan bases, by the way. Like, that's not a Nebraska specific thing. Like, I don't think Creighton fans spend a lot of time watching ACC basketball or Big. Like, I think it's very like I think people that just love college basketball in general are more outliers versus, hey, I watch Nebraska, so I watch the Big Ten, and that's about it. Or I watch Creighton, so I like Big East, and that's about it.
I'll ride with that.
If
you watch Big East basketball, it's hard to complain about Big Ten officiating.
That's true.
And vice versa.
And that's not a Creighton thing.
That's not a Creighton thing.
That's a Big East
That's
thing.
just a. I mean, the ACC is historically soft. Like that.
Yeah.
That's not a hot take.
Yeah, that's
not
just what
even
it is.
Tepid.
Yeah.
That's why they got 4 seeds, right?
The SEC is not soft at this point in time.
Yeah, they play. You watch the SEC and you're like, how do we go through these stretches where these teams like can't throw it in the ocean? I mean, you watch Tennessee and Auburn a week or 10 days ago, and you're like, this sucks. Like Billis could barely get out of the officiating's way. He was so mad at how that game was being officiated. But some nights it's just like that in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a different level. Well, in the SEC, I guess you could probably call a foul in every play. So unless it's like a transition layup or something. So you got to let some of the stuff go, but then they let kind of a lot of stuff go, and it's super physical and at times, and other times it's not. I was watching Oklahoma and Missouri the other night.
I looked at that game a lot. I let Ravi talk me off of it. It's fine.
Yeah. Oklahoma is kind of
weird team.
I don't know what to do with Oklahoma.
Sometimes they look like grade A garbage.
I never know what to do with Oklahoma.
And they're better than that.
They look like garbage.
But Missouri's got a coach that, if it wasn't for a guy or two, you could make the case he's coach of the year in that conference.
Well, yeah. It'll probably end up going to somebody in Alabama.
No, I don't know, man. If Missouri stays relevant, he's gonna make a case for SEC coach of the year.
We're gonna ignore Golden.
I get it. No, listen.
Yeah,
Golden's doing.
I just don't want to be dismissive.
No, yeah, I'm not. I don't want to be dismissive, but
not a lot of people saw Missouri coming
for sure.
No, and if Nebraska ends up, projections playing Missouri as a 7-10, I'm not sure that one is the matchup you want.
For sure. Mike, let's move. We got about 6 minutes left here. Let's move over to high school. You mentioned that Westview Miller North game last night. DB mentioned earlier, a lot of people thought, okay, Miller North maybe has the best roster. Westview had been probably playing the best. Is Miller North, we've seen them kind of slow climb after the rough start. Are they finally playing up to the potential of that roster?
Yeah, I think so. I think last night was a huge win for Miller North. And in that environment, Westview's done a really good job of building a pretty good home court advantage environment. It's
I don't know how much of that was the Emmett Dillon thing, but that place was lit.
I think I was there for the prep game, and it was lit that night. I mean, it's been building, and the team's winning, obviously. The girls' game had a good environment.
Their girls' team, I still think, is flying under the radar. Now, Westview's social media account does a good job of keeping Westview girls relevant. Folks covering girls' high school basketball doesn't do a good job of keeping Westview girls relevant.
They're 20-2.
You ain't got to tell me.
I know. I'm like 20-2, man. Like,
I get it. I get it. If that was any other 20-win team in Class A, they would have way more run.
Well, I think part of it too is everyone just, and I'm one of those people that like, I think it's going to be extremely difficult to beat Millard West down the stretch here. And so I think everyone's like, oh, everybody's playing for second. So it's like that's probably why. But I will tell you, Coach Simons has done a heck of a job because you look at kind of just their size and all that stuff. They've kind of overachieved a little bit as far as, win total and all that stuff so far. I would say just based off of, the roster and size and all that. So he's a good coach. And hey, imagine this. I said this to a couple of people this week. Westview good at basketball. Who would have thought that if you look at their administration? Not a lot.
Yeah, you have a state title winning principal. You have a multi-state title winning athletic director.
Yeah.
I actually know a thing or two about hoops.
I think they kind of are. They were always going to be good at basketball when the principal is who it is and the AD is who he is. They were always going to be good at basketball. That was never not going to be.
The best characteristic of Tom Lee is not I get it, the quiet competitiveness, and he's engaging.
Oh man, he's the best.
He's engaging.
He's awesome, and like he is like the mayor there, man. Everybody wants to talk to him and shake his hand. He's the nicest guy. You can joke with him, and he actually understands a joke. Some administrators look at you funny when you try and joke about stuff. So,
hey, what are you doing with districts in wrestling?
I'm not doing anything. I won't be there because I'm going to Heartland Hoops Classic. I'll be actually in Grand Island tonight. So. Yeah, I got that all day tomorrow, which is good. I think the slate's pretty good tomorrow.
What are the highlights?
It's the first year I'll miss it in a while.
Highlights would be the 9:40 game. Actually, AM is one of the best. Johnson Brock, who just lost their 50 whatever game winning streak last night, was snapped by Freeman. Freeman beat Johnson Brock. So Johnson Brock plays Summerland.
Hope that Freeman wanted me to let Dannon know that they've got facilities out there now. I don't know what that's all about, but
their gym's nice. I've been there.
Keep up on everything, man. He's got a university to run. Freeman.
The Freeman gym is nice, and they do a good job like streaming stuff too. The Millard North plays Papio South and Millard North play pretty tough games. Wasatch Academy was ranked, I think, 11th or something in the country. And then Papio South plays Pembroke Hill, who has a nice point guard. So that, and then throughout the day, oh man, I'm trying to top of my head this, and it's not going to work. Donovan Trumbull has a good game. Ashland Greenwood plays Adams Central. GICC plays Sydney. And Mount Zion Prep plays Sunrise as the showcase game to end the night. So I'll just be there all day because I'm going. I kind of did it on purpose. My 4 game of the week options this week were teams kind of out that way, and so I'm staying in Grand Island tonight.
I'm moving that way. You guys are picking games out that way.
Yeah, I did. So I did that on purpose. That's why I won't be in the Metro tonight, just so I could be out there and ready. So I have to do some work tonight after the York Seward girls game, which I'm excited. I haven't been to York in a long time for a basketball game. So excited to go to that tonight. And then I'll get back to the hotel in Grand Island and do some prep work because I'm the color analyst for the final 3 games tomorrow on the stream.
Oh, go ahead and get that double dip game right. By the way, York, Zoe's favorite gas station to date.
There you go. That is our guy, Mike Sautter, Hurrdat Sports, NEBPreps. Make sure you follow along Mike and NEBPreps all weekend for Heartland Hoops Classic and everything you need to know there. Mike, we appreciate it as always.
Hey, state wrestling next week is going to be awesome, by the way. And I believe it's Nebraska Cody's birthday today. So
there you go.
We got to hit up Manquist.
Is that wrestling, Cody?
Yeah.
There we go. That's Mike. We appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jerome.
Yep.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It is time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets, whether it's at the casino in Lincoln or in Omaha. They've got you covered, whether it's straight bets, parlays, props, whatever nonsense DB's throwing at you.
Props.
He's got you covered as well. He's
nonsense.
Well, witchcraft is what I like to call it, because you're coming up with stuff that nobody in their right mind should come up with, and coming up winners. But get to warhorsecasino.com for a full list of promotions and house rules.
Wasn't yesterday hilarious? The two worst lines on the card.
Yep.
Were what?
Omaha, South Dakota State.
Yep.
Because that was wild.
Yep.
And then
the one I gave you.
Jacksonville State.
Yep.
Yeah.
So J-State was.
So that one's always weird. Anytime it crosses 0, I get uncomfy.
I know.
I don't listen, you're better at this than I am. Like 100%. No, you are. You're better at this than I am. But anytime a number crosses 0, it's red flags. I stay away. Like, I'm just out. I'm out. I'm just out.
You skirt.
Yeah. Like, if the number crosses 0, I'm out.
Yeah. So, and it was just, so we always go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You'll say, man, I'm just going to take the easy money. I was like, nah, the line isn't right.
Yeah. Is the line right versus is it free money?
And so yesterday with Jackson State, playing a team with a losing conference record, losing record. Jacksonville State was playing at an all right clip. Line didn't seem right.
Mm-hmm.
You would have played Jackson State as well, right? Just, I'm going to take the money.
If it hadn't crossed 0, yes. Yeah.
The other one was SDSU and
Omaha.
And if I didn't like Omaha, I'd have been like, that line's not right.
Yes. Because
Omaha's on a heater.
You asked me yesterday, and I go...
Yeah, I asked you what... This is off here.
Okay, yeah, and I go, I think it's at South Dakota State. I probably go, they're a favorite by... I wanted to say 2.5. I thought it was too much, so I said 1.5. And the number was 9.5.
Yep.
And I wasn't crazy, was I? Like, it probably should have been 2.5-ish.
And I told our mutual friend, the balding guy, the number's big for a reason. Like, so I picked wrong.
Yeah.
One held true to your form.
Yep.
The other
held true to
mine.
Because in that situation, I probably would have gone, that feels like free money. I'm taking Omaha.
Yeah, Sam Houston had they had 9 wins.
So here's the other thing that's a little tricky here, right? Is with these smaller conferences,
which I like,
historically, you can get some lines that are wrong. That's why I used to really like them. When I did this more,
100% with you.
I used to crush Missouri Valley because Creighton was in it. So
how do you know all the how do you get into all the player props and stuff?
Oh, I don't do player props in small college.
Okay. Just
if I've got an inkling on some of the bigger games, I'll do a player prop. I'll do a player prop on a bigger game before I'll do a line, because I think typically the less played stuff has more value, in my opinion. That's why I would like to go to the smaller conferences. I used to crush Missouri Valley when Creighton was there because I knew them super well, and then I watched a ton of Mountain West basketball because I would stay up late. So I was really good at Mountain West, and I was really good at Missouri Valley. But especially back then, this is a few years ago, like, the lines tended not to be as accurate.
Yeah.
We might be getting to the point where there's so much exposure that most of the lines are pretty good now. Because even 3 years ago, if I'd gotten...
I went, my own opposite theory on not taking Sam Houston.
Yeah. Like, if you had...
Everything said take Sam Houston.
If this,
no business with that.
If this Omaha South Dakota State line had been 9.5, and we're in the year, I don't know, how long has sports gambling been legal in Iowa? Like 5 years?
Oh, more than that.
Is it? So let's just go 5 years ago. If that had been the line 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, hammering that. That is, they don't know the Summit League this year.
I don't want to say that, because I'm assuming that if you can have casinos, you can have sports gambling.
That wasn't accurate.
Okay, so don't let me just.
I know it was pre-COVID because I went to the sports book pre-COVID, so I remember that. But it was because I remember I placed a bet on the 49ers, the first Super Bowl they played with Jimmy Garoppolo. So
I smell bet.
So that's the only reason I remember that. But like 5 years ago, I'd have gone there and I go, oh, they don't know that Omaha's on a heater. They're taking South Dakota State, historically really good and really good at home. That's free money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't trust that anymore because they're getting really, really dialed in on these lines.
Let me give you a tricky one.
Okay.
Have you looked at anything?
Not today, no.
Okay. UCLA is on the road in Bloomington. Bloomington coming off the win.
Big win.
In East Lansing.
Against Michigan State.
As Matt DeMarinis would say, Indiana? Question mark. Which was one of the.
That's a quote.
Which was one of the greatest non-saying anything text.
But saying everything.
Everything. Indiana?
Question mark?
What would you make? What would Ravi Lulla make that line?
Okay, so UCLA coming off a loss at Indiana, coming off a win.
You're fighting Mick Cronin's.
My fighting Mick Cronin's. I'm still going. UCLA needs to be favored there. I think not a big number though. Traveling cross country. I'm gonna go.
I mean, it's a joke.
UCLA minus 3.5.
It is 1.5 UCLA.
Ooh, a little lower than I would think.
The
1.5.
Gets...
A little lower than I would think. See, that's a spot. So with a number that small, I'm just going to play the money line.
I would too.
Like regardless of how I feel. Because if I like.
It's going to be a smidge.
It's going to be a little bit juicy. Yeah. Not a ton, but a little bit.
Yeah.
You probably look like minus 130, something like that.
5.
Okay, so I'll take that's not huge. For my 1.5 points, I'll take that.
All right. You're like you're like our other rich trust fund, baby.
I don't need a tunnel to walk out on the court.
Pressing.
So, but I mean,
I don't care if I'm paying $11 for eggs, DB. I need eggs.
Hear the words.
I really don't eat eggs that much anymore. But I mean, because you're going to pay minus.
That's what he says to me.
You're going to pay minus 110 anyway, so minus 135 to not have to worry about the point, I think is worth it. But if you like Indiana plus the 1.5, just go ahead and get a little plus money on the money line there. Like in anything under 2 points, I'm just going to play money line.
Yeah. So, you think coming off the win, the loss, dangerous Indiana. I think you'd have to play UCLA on the money line.
Indiana sucks.
I'm
sorry.
But,
I get that.
But so does the line.
It does. No, you're right. But like that's one of those.
What would Kenneth? What does Kenneth make?
Kenneth Pomeroy?
Yeah. What does one Kenneth?
My guy, Ken Pomeroy.
Yeah.
All right. So UCLA at Indiana tonight. He's got it a 2-point game. So it's right on.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I don't trust Indiana or Mike Woodson as far as I can throw them.
They're completely delusional about who
that man's like, hey guys, I'm leaving at the end of the year. I'm telling you this halfway through the season, but hang in there with me.
And all of a sudden, everybody finds out they leave and they have their best win of the season. Coincidence?
I think not.
Maybe Mike Woodson does suck. I don't know. They had lost 5 in a row before that, and then they go and get not just 5 in a row. They had lost 7 of 8.
Yeah,
their only win coming OT at Ohio State. That feels stinky. That's a stinky cheese.
I'm going to keep it simple and I'll give it to you.
What do we got today?
I think you got to take St. Louis on the road.
Ooh, my fighting Robbie Avila.
Yeah, on the road, and it's against. I know it's Jaden Dawson and guy I have a little of a affinity for in Loyola Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 2.5. Ricola, give me St. Louis.
You want the Billikens?
Yeah. But I would also take if I like your rationale. I just
on the money line.
Yeah, with UCLA.
Yeah, no, like I said, anything under 2 points, I'm taking a money line. If I like it, like so that one, I would take my minus 135 on UCLA.
I don't. So we do disagree though. If I could if I'm getting 2, and it's marginal, I don't know if I would always take the plus money line if I wanted the dog. Sometimes I want the 2 points.
Up to 2. I mean,
basketball is certainly different than football because
sure.
you do get 1-point games. In basketball, I mean, there's so many games. Anecdotally, are there a lot of 1-point wins and losses?
Not really.
Doesn't seem like it.
I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, there's not.
So I would want the 2-point cushion. I think.
Yeah. So 1.5, like
especially if we're only talking about like $10.
I'm talking under 2. So 1.5, 1, or obviously pick them because they don't do half-point spreads.
You probably could convince me in hoops.
But you don't get to a lot of just like two.
Not so much in football.
Evens.
Though. Especially with all these yahoos going for 2 and stuff.
Yeah, it's harder to predict what the margins are going to be.
Screwed up.
But, yeah, anything under 2, just give me my money line.
Yeah.
Especially if I like the favorite. Just give me my money line.
You're my second trust fund baby friend. Ravi Lulla. Here for all the juice and all the plus money.
If I got a trust fund, ain't nobody told me about it. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Bet On It, brought to you by War Sportsbook. Matt Vrzal coming up next. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by our Friday friend, Matt Vrzal, owner of Paisans Pizzeria, former Husker. What's going on, Verz?
What's up, boys?
Matt, you strike me as the guy that's got a lot of heart-shaped pizza crust ready to go over there at Old Paisans. Nothing screams love like your personality. Can we get heart-shaped pizzas today, Matty?
Probably not as lunch. That lunch we'll have.
Are you really?
A bunch of weird sounds.
Are you really doing that?
I'm getting a ton of feedback over here.
Are you?
Yeah, there's some like comment. Yeah, we'll do them for dinner. There's not a lot of ask for them at lunch, but yeah, we'll make them. We've always made them. You've bought one before.
That's not true.
Hey, what time does the kayak get there for the Vest brothers?
I have never.
You guys expecting a big
ever purchased a heart pizza? I don't know if you. I know you only have like a handful of black friends, but I think it was a different one.
Had one. Zobear's had one.
The other black guy, you know, wasn't me.
We got a lot of black friends.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're kind of right. I watched you hold court at the funeral the other day. I didn't know whether to cheer for you or I don't know. It's like, go get him, Matty.
I'm probably top 5 in the popular white.
You hear I said it? Whites.
Yeah.
That's the title I hold. That's probably better than my national championship. My guys like me.
Tough five. Tough five,
He's
Matty.
like, you're going to put that in your Twitter bio, national champion, top 5 white.
Hey, say it for me again.
What?
What? What? All right. He's a goddamn child. Now, let me ask, were you
But I'm mean, though. You tell me I'm mean. I don't have a good personality. I'm mean.
No, the personality is very subjective.
Mean spirit.
Let's not. Wait, is that how I talk?
You're a meanie.
Okay.
What are you doing for Valentine's Day, you romantic gentleman?
Yeah. I got a staff meeting at 11. I'm gonna get the ears lowered. Well, I actually have to take Micah, and that's going to be about it. Your boy will be at the house tonight, chilling.
Whoa, what? Like you're not getting Jay flowers or a meal she likes or something?
No.
Dude.
Huh? What?
Get your shite
Well,
together.
you guys got a great relationship. Why don't you send her something?
Because I ain't marrying her. I don't lay down with her at night. That's you. You're better than that, Damon. This is my disappointed in you face.
Give it to me again. Let me see it. Oh, it looks like how you always look.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. Robbie, what are you doing?
We went out last night.
Ravi was kind of off the grid yesterday. Good for him.
Oh,
yeah.
What a novel concept. You take your wife out to dinner.
Wow.
She was off all day. She was off all day yesterday, so we spent most of the day together.
Yeah.
Where are you taking your wife, Matty?
Hey, buddy, I ain't in that club. I tried that in high school and college, and evidently whatever girls want, I don't have. So that ship has sailed, my guy.
Oh, shoot. I forgot what I was going to ask him, and it was pretty good.
Nice.
No, it's not nice.
All I want to do. Good job talking.
Just trying to derail this thing.
What the fudge? Damn it.
Verz, I've got one. Maybe it'll help jog DB's memory a little bit here. we were talking earlier because we've seen some interesting coaching staff hires in college, bringing guys in from the NFL. Most recently, Patricia going to Ohio State. And DB brought up an interesting point about personality fits on a coaching staff as opposed to maybe resumes. Obviously you've been a part of some coaching staffs. You've seen a lot of football. How much do you think, like, bringing on assistants that bring out different parts of a head coach matters when making these hiring decisions?
It matters. You don't want somebody that's going to come in and think they got revolutionary ideas and going to upset your apple cart. Not that I'll put it this way. Rules are very simple at Pisons, okay? I have a way I would like you to do it. When you master that way, then we can discuss the ways you want to do it, and it might be better. And we have implemented some of those things that some of the kids have come up with, and it's a great day when they do. But so for me as a head coach, I'd be like, listen, know you got a huge brain, know you got a great pedigree. That's why you're here, right? Here's how we operate. Here's what we do. When you master this, then let's sit down and discuss ways we can make it even better. Okay, but get it our way so the kids feel comfortable with you, that you're bought into our system. Then we can slowly evolve. That would be my focus of it. That would be how I would attack it. And, Matt, Patricia, if you're in college and you think you have the greatest staff ever assembled, you're wrong. But, with Ohio State, they're always looking to improve. Now, they had attrition, but when you can go out and you can make your staff as good or better, I think you have to take that chance regardless of the position they coach or what they do. Like, it's a business. And anytime you can get better talent into your business or equal talent into your business, you do that. And you make those moves. And look at Saban when he was at Bama. They had former head football coaches that had to sit in meetings and couldn't answer the question. Like, take your medicine, sit there. You're here for a reason. You ain't here because you won, because if you won, you'd still be at your other school. But you didn't. Now you're with me. Sit there, learn, shut up, listen, and then when one of these guys moves on and gets a head coaching job, then you might be able to get their seat.
Matt, you've kind of mastered the art of streamlining and being efficient, so this may play into kind of your wheelhouse, but do you feel like too much is being made of 105? Like, 105 should be plenty, pretty, or interesting to see how doable it is.
I try to base everything with the 105. I'm not as fired up with the 105 as everybody else is. I think when you get that, if you look at that now, whoever's in charge of keeping the roster in a balance, that's going to be the person that has the hard job. Because if I try to equate it back to the most efficient practices I've ever been a part of, which were the 4-station practices, I've got 22 guys at every station. So that's 88. So I still have some spares left over. So I can still move guys around and do things. So I think 105 is a great number. When you had coaches back a long time ago that could manage that 125, 140 number in a different manner, and I think they were just more efficient at the way they worked. Work now seems more focused. Like I'm focusing on these things. Not that it was chaotic before, but there wasn't a lot of thought, I guess. It's everybody's going to learn everything, and then that way when it's your turn to go in, it's not foreign to you. It's an easy transition to you. I do think with the 105, you are going to miss out on some, but your relationship with, like I've said before, I talked about taking over Wesley, and I think that would be something I would do. Getting great relationships with junior colleges to be able to tell a kid, hey, we don't think you're quite ready for us now, but we would rather you go play in games than come sit here and watch practice. So
especially if JUCO doesn't count now or somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Correct. JUCO and NIA do not count. So you go down there and you play, and then you're going to come back up here when you're more developed. You have late bloomers. You have guys that just it hasn't clicked with them yet. Like I think how creative you get with it, you can be defeatist at anything. So they're going to take our players away. We're screwed. It's not going to work. Whatever. Or you can get creative and say, hey, what if I did this? And what if I am honest with these kids and I tell them these things? We're going to put you here for a year. We want to see you develop. We want to see you play. And then you're going to be back here in a year with your still 4 years of eligibility remaining.
Verz, another thing we were talking about this morning that I thought was really interesting was kind of when guys that have had limited roles start to take on more responsibility, How as a coach did you kind of manage staying within a guy's skill set versus letting him get overexposed for something maybe he wasn't ready yet for?
Being like from a player aspect?
Yeah,
like
you're coaching
coach
guys
aspect?
that you know kind of have a certain shelf life, right?
Yeah,
If they can just play, those guys are easy. But there are guys that you have to use situationally where you're like, okay, and you have to kind of manage the.
So the big thing of it is being aware and being present in practice, right? So what are my guys' strengths? My top guys might have these strengths. My next guys might have this strength. So if we get into it and something happens where I got to put somebody in that I don't feel maybe is at my top level, I'm going to make sure my OC knows, hey, I know you love this, okay? But the guy that's going to go in the game right now, that's not a strength of his. So if you run that and it doesn't work, understand why. This is what he's good at. This is what he excels at. I don't think on any staff you could ever communicate enough. And even if at the end of the week I write it down, that this is what this guy does well. This here you go. This is what your starters do great. This is what your next guy up does great. And then that way the OC is armed with ammo. Now, you want to strive to get to a point where the faults or the lacking, it's all you work on in practice. And that's what those now you say, okay, we got a sub in, doesn't matter, run the same place. He's good. That's the goal. That's true development. When number one goes out, number two goes in, the same players playing the game.
That's our guy, Matt Vrzal. Verse, we appreciate it as always. And we will.
Yes.
Two things.
Yes, sir.
I need to talk to you.
Okay.
And then number two, you can't get mad at Jay if she forgets something like you do sometimes if you don't do something nice today.
Who gets mad? I never get mad.
We got Matt Vrzal, relationship doctor. We appreciate
Oh, yeah, no catering. No catering today, so we'll be open for lunch.
Oh, there we go.
That's his parting
Yeah, I
shot because
got
he knows that makes me
conference.
upset.
Appreciate parent teacher conference, so I got to sleep in today. It was a great day.
What's sleeping in, like 6?
Normally on Friday, I'm back down here by 3:30 a.m. So.
Oof.
Wow, good on you.
Attaboy. Verse, we appreciate it as always. Have a good weekend.
See you, fellas.
See you, buddy.
And just like that, we've broken up with radio. We'll see you on Monday, digital only.